here in the Paracast, the gold standard of paranormal radio. And now, here's Gene Steinberg.
We have them all in one room, ladies and gentlemen. Well, a virtual room anyway. We have Chris O'Brien somewhere in Arizona, Gene Steinberg, who knows, and Nick Redfern in Texas. But he's not a cowboy. Or have you, because of the years you spent in Texas, Nick Redfern, have you started wearing the Western hat and the six guns and everything?
No, I just t-shirts, jeans, bandanas, that's about it, really.
You have not become an honorary Texan.
Oh, well, I'm an honorary Texan. I just don't wear the cowboy gear, that's all. I like it in Texas. I like the Texas culture and everything, and the people, it's just, I just do my own thing clothes-wise, that's all.
I really have to talk to my niece. She and her husband have lived in Houston for a while, but I haven't heard from her. For several years, I haven't heard anything about what might have happened as a result of that hurricane, so I just hope that she's all right, that Lori's all right, but I haven't heard from her. You kind of wonder. Sometimes you lose touch with family members. She's my niece. Yeah. We'll have to find out. Lori Kincaid, her name is. So if anyone knows her, tell her Gene's looking for her, find out what she's doing. Before we get started with our Halloween, one of our Halloween shows about shapeshifters and all those weird creatures, even a man who is pure in heart and says his prayers by night may become a wolf when the wolfbane blooms and the autumn moon is bright. You remember that, right, Nick?
I remember that, from the old Universal movie, The Wolfman. Yeah.
Right. There were a couple of different versions. One was the autumn moon is bright, the other one the moon is full and bright, because they wanted to make the phenomenon happen all around the year, so they changed the way things were done. So before we get started, we've got multiple threads in the Paracast forums, and Nick, you might want to get involved in this once Chris and I talk about it, mentioning the one, the only Tom DeLonge and this event that he had, and I'm not sure what To the Stars is going to do, but it's not disclosure, it's raising money for some advanced scientific projects. I've lost track of this. Nick, have you been following it at all?
Well, yeah, I have. It began really, just as an aside, I actually met Tom DeLonge about 8 years ago, and he wasn't speaker or anything like that. He was attending one of Ryan Wood's crashed UFO conferences in Vegas, and he particularly wanted to see Jim Mars, who was on the speaker bill. And I recognized him, who he was, and we had a chat all about sort of UFOs and punk music and whatever. But it shows his interest actually does go back a long, long time, even though it wasn't sort of publicized back in sort of 2008, 2009 when he went to see Jim Mars talk. Yeah, sort of lately, the way that it's all began in the last year or whatever more, it all kind of started off that this was going to be sort of the road towards UFO disclosure, that he had sources and information, and this was all going to come tumbling out, etc., etc. And it didn't, and it hasn't. Like you said, this is nothing to do with disclosure. It's all about sort of advanced technologies and getting people on board, with funding, etc. But none of this surprises me because over the years I've written numerous articles about disclosure, mysterious universe, and I have no faith, and I've never had any faith that disclosure's coming. I think it's all just garbage. It's kind of like The Boy Who Cried Wolf. It's like, how many times do we have to hear it's coming and it never comes? It's not a case of me giving up on disclosure. I've never had any faith in it in the first place. I think it's just, there's just nothing to it. I remember, when the whole MJ12 document thing kicked off in 87, when the MJ12 document surfaced, people were saying, this is going to be the first step to disclosure. And then, Stephen Greer was talking about it in the early 2000s, then Steve Bassett, and it still hasn't come. So, if it comes, we'll see. If it doesn't come, I won't be at all surprised at all. And Rich Dolan was also talking about it, sort of after disclosure, what the what the result would be. Well, that's all fair and fine, but you can only really predict what life's going to be after disclosure when you actually had disclosure. So for me, it's a case of, okay, been there, seen it, done it, and move on, because it's clearly, the pattern is just going on and on and on of there's never any breakthrough at all. There's just people claiming there's going to be a breakthrough.
You see, what bothers me about all this is I'm accused of keeping my head in the 1950s, but all this stuff is just repeating the 1950s all over again. Whatever they did then, they just change a few words, a few planets, and they just repeat the same old nonsense. The thing that bothers me is if there was ever something real to disclose and some real event that might happen, who would believe it after all this?
Well, I mean, there's a lot of interesting questions to be asked if, disclosure does come. For example, one of the interesting ones is if disclosure isn't what people are expecting, then they're going to say, well, it's still not disclosure. I mean, let's say, for example, the government says, yes, we're going to disclose, and they say aliens did crash at Roswell, and we got 5 bodies or 4 bodies or whatever. Ufology would be over the moon, But if they then said, but cattle mutilations are just germ warfare experiments, you would have some researchers say, no, that's garbage. Aliens were doing cattle mutilation. So in other words, even if we get disclosure, because of prejudices and deeply held belief systems in ufology, if ufologists don't hear everything they want to hear, then the chances are they'll say it isn't real disclosure. So even if the government, is doing this out of the good of its heart, they're still in a difficult place if people won't accept the government's version of disclosure. I mean, what if they said, yeah, we've got all these bodies from Roswell and everywhere else, but alien abductions is just dreams. It's nightmares in people's heads. Again, you'd have that position of people saying it's not real disclosure. So, if it comes, there's going to be problems based on what the government says it actually knows.
Well, one thing that is very intriguing to me is the cast of characters that now have been publicly identified by DeLonge, which includes some pretty interesting individuals, including Hal Puthoff, who I was a little bit surprised to see allowing his name to be attached to, this kind of ex sort of grade B rock stars company. What do you make of the actual participants involved in this, Nick? We got some pretty high-powered individuals.
Well, no, you're right. I mean, I think the important thing to note is that there are some high-profile, high-powered figures in it, but we're talking about something that deals with sort of future alternative technologies and things like that. So they are the kind of people that you would perhaps have on board, but that's not what we were told that DeLonge was going to be involved in when he first came on board. So in other words, it doesn't surprise me that this program with alternative technologies, et cetera, would have such people on board. But I think that makes perfect common sense. But as I said, that isn't what people were expecting the unveiling was going to be. I know from speaking to most people I spoke to that they thought what was going to happen was that there was going to be like an announcement that DeLonge and, people attached to him had these insider sources, and it was going to be like a vehicle to get this information out there, and it would be a form of disclosure. Well, it's nothing to do with disclosure at all. Even the issue of advanced technologies, there's no solid illusion that it's connected to alien technology.
Right.
We'll have more about this, but then we're going to go into Shapeshifters. Nick Redfern, Gene Steinberg, Chris O'Brien, you're in
the Paracast.
We also have swag. We have all these exclusive Paracast things that you can buy. We've got 60 or so different items, and entails t-shirts, sleeves for notebook computers, iPad cases, mouse pads, the Paracast Jumbo tote bag, all sorts of t-shirts and jackets and stuff like that for men and women. We have a Paracast aluminum water bottle. All this stuff, you go to store.theparacast.com, store.theparacast.com. What makes it special is that the items are the best quality, great T-shirts, fabrics, and they have our official logo on them. That's what makes them special, in multiple sizes and colors. We even have stuff for children, stuff for women, stuff for men. We have all sorts of sizes, like small up to X large. A lot of good stuff. That's the swag from the Paracast. If you go to store.theparacast.com, stop by and take a shopping tour.
Have you checked your Google search results lately? Search results are usually the first impression that people form of you or your business. So make sure that they create a positive impression with ReputationDefender.com. What the internet says about you can have a big impact on your life and your livelihood, even if it's not true. Fortunately, you can now control how you look online and in online search results with ReputationDefender.com. Call 800-831-0771 now. That's 800-831-0771 for your free reputation analysis. If you have negative material from an ex-employee, upset patient, or former client, newspaper article, legal issue, social media, or other source showing up in your search results, you can combat it with ReputationDefender.com. Our dedicated experts in patented technology can help make your online search results look their best. Call 800-831-0771 to learn more. 800-831-0771. That's 800-831-0771. Or visit ReputationDefender.com.
Fully cooked, ready-to-eat bacon. I'm talking thick, meaty, center-cut presidential bacon. Savory and delicious. I buy some, I use some, I store some. Awesome. No refrigeration needed with a 10-year shelf life. NASA-packed technology. Bacon. Fully cooked, fully hydrated, ready to eat right from the packed bacon. Or warm and served. Life-saving, ready-to-eat bacon. 10-year shelf life bacon. Ships free at fullycookedbacon.com. Fullycookedbacon.com.
Are you still looking for that one iodine that you can really trust? A medical doctor-endorsed product that is backed by honest research and true integrative science? Then search no further. Go to NutriMedical.com for Dr. Bill Deagle's Nutriodine, proven time and time again to be the very best iodine available for you. Nutriodine is the only Tesla-activated monatomic plasma iodine in the world. It optimizes mitochondrial function and generation of new mitochondria, from totally neutralizing the venom from a desert recluse spider bite in Southern California to eliminating malaria parasites reported by medical missionaries in central India. Dr. Bill's Nutriodine is simply the most powerful healing formula there is. Nutriodine clears the body of all known pathogens, restores it to an alkaline state, and even promotes stem cell regeneration. Order Dr. Bill's Nutriodine today at 888-212-8871 or visit us online at NutriMedical.com.
Hi, this is Ted Anderson. I'm here to tell you about GCNtelecare.com, a team of board-certified doctors assisting you 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. Within 15 minutes of registration, care your family can afford. Revolutionizing the healthcare industry, virtual consulting providing diagnosis of non-emergency medical issues by phone or secure video on computer or smart mobile devices. GCNtelecare.com, virtual care anywhere.
We'd like to hear from you. If you have a comment or question about the Paracast, send it to news@theparacast.com. That's news@theparacast.com. And don't forget to visit our famous Paracast community forums at forum.theparacast.com.
We're talking about Nick Redfern's book on Shapeshifters, but let's get through this first, all the stuff about alleged disclosure. What also surprised me, and Paul Kimball has been ragging on her, I think, for this and other reasons, is that Leslie Kane glommed onto this Tom DeLonge story in an article at HuffPost. And I kind of wondered about that because I didn't think of her as a person who'd get really interested by this.
I haven't seen the article, but I mean, what I would say, I think why the whole issue of disclosure is so appealing to a lot of people is because after 70 years of no proof coming through, I think people view it as sort of the last chance to get the proof we're looking for. In other words, you know, it's kind of like the one thing that could blow the whole thing wide open would be disclosure. So I think that's why, even though I don't think it's coming, even I acknowledge that disclosure is the thing that could open the doors. And I think that's why people find it so appealing and why they're so drawn to it, because it's the make or break thing. And I think for that reason, more than anything else, that's why people are driven to it, because since 47, the government hasn't come clean. And also the intelligences behind the UFO phenomenon, the real UFO phenomenon, they haven't, sort of landed on the White House lawn, or there hasn't been some widespread sudden appearance in the skies of thousands of UFOs. That hasn't happened either. So in other words, nobody is disclosing us or them. And people, I think, as they get older and they see time running away from them, they get more and more driven towards, well, we've got to get disclosure because, in 20 years or whatever, they're going to be 95 or something, and they won't have got the answers. So I think that's why it's so appealing to so many, because it doesn't promise we're going to get answers, but it's the one way conceivably that we could get answers. So that's why people are driven to it like a magnet.
Well, I think at this point at my age, I have to say that unless it happens real soon, I won't be around to see it. Not that people my age are old anymore. I run across people in their 80s and 90s routinely now. So I expect that, I'll be around and maybe there will be disclosure, but probably there will be self-driving cars first so I can get around when I can't drive anymore.
Well, I think the important thing to sort of realize, and it's like a realization, is that regardless of who says what, or, the promise of this or the promise of that, nothing has ever come through. I've been to conferences in the past, 2001 and 2, where people were saying, I've got insider sources, and it's coming in 2002. 2002 comes around, it's coming in 2003. And this kept going on and on. In other words, the likelihood is that we won't get disclosure. And why I say that is because you just have to look at the past. It hasn't happened despite all these promises. So why should we even assume that it's going to happen after all that? My view is that nobody delivered on it because nobody can deliver on it, and the chances are nobody will deliver on it. Because the way I look at it is the big question that often doesn't get asked. It's not a matter of whether we get disclosure. It's what benefits the people hiding it to disclose. And if they have nothing solid or beneficial to them to disclose, they won't disclose. So I think the important thing is to think about that. Is there a reason why, from their perspective, that they should disclose? And if there isn't, they probably won't.
So I don't know what's going to happen with this crowdsourcing project from Tom DeLonge. I don't think it got a lot of coverage.
And the reason why I think it didn't was purely and simply because it was not what everybody was initially led to think it was. Yeah, advanced technologies, alternative technologies, new ways of, radical ways of, introducing new technologies. That's all cool stuff. But, it's nothing to do with releasing, the files on Roswell or the files on the Cash Landrum case or what the government knows about abductions. Regardless of what we got now, that is what people thought were coming. That's what people were led to think was coming.
I kind of disagree a little bit, Nick. I've been saying all along that it's just another way for someone to attempt to monetize the subject and to make money. So it met with my expectations 100%.
Well, that may be the case in some cases, but with DeLonge, Blink-182, were and still are a huge band, sold in the millions, literally millions of copies. So I don't see him as being someone who needs to do what he's doing. It's not like most bands who, go on until they're 70, or like the Rolling Stones, or, bands like Aerosmith, who announced not too long ago, their farewell tour when they're sort of pushing 70. He's what, late 30s, early 40s, something like that maybe. So in other words, he's, as a rock star, he could continue doing that for years and still have a massive income. So now, I'm not saying there aren't people in disclosure who, see the monetary angle of it, but I don't see that with him. I actually do think he has a genuine interest, but I don't see him as someone who is short on pennies,
Well, with rock and roll, you never know. Some of these people just live beyond their means. No. He's 41, and he'll be 42 on December 13. And I did find a story in a site called the AV Club. Tom DeLonge is crowdsourcing a spaceship. Oh, well. And remember, he's a former member of Blink-182, so we don't know how much money he actually pulled in. It's possible he didn't pull much at all.
Well, I was being kind of facetious.
Bear in mind, their sort of big album that they kicked off in the late 90s called Enema of the State, that was a huge seller. That was like, gigantic in the UK, where I was still living at the time. So, and it's only been a couple of years since he quit the band. So, we're talking about 13, 14 years of being an extremely successful band. So, like you said, unless somebody really lives beyond their means, I honestly don't think, he's short of cash.
Yeah, I was actually being a bit cynical, and I didn't really mean that literally, that he needs money. But I do think that the underpinnings of this whole thing does, I think, revolve around monetizing the subject, whether he's doing it for his own personal enrichment or for other, maybe more altruistic motivations. I'm not sure, but I just, it's hard not to be, to get a little cynical when you're dealing with this subject, and in the way that the Greers and the some of the people in this field that are obviously in it for personal enrichment, under the guise of being real genuine and having genuine motivations.
We'll have more to come with Nick, Gene, and Chris. You're in
the Paracast.
Thank you for listening to GCN. Be sure to visit GCNlive.com today.
Anytime, any place, anywhere. Radio remains the most intimate of all forms of media. At home, at work, in the car, on smartphones. Over 90% of consumers still listen to radio every week. That makes choosing radio as a place to advertise your business one of the best decisions you can make. Email advertise@gcnlive.com and partner up with an experienced GCN representative. Advertise@gcnlive.com. Easy, affordable, effective.
This just in. Before your doctor gives you another antibiotic prescription that you don't want, get this free report, The Miracle of Garlic, your first home medicine. This free report is filled with easy kitchen remedies for common colds, flus, sore throats, ear infections, and more. Plus, learn to boost your immunity before you get sick. Go now to gcnwellness.com. Just like it sounds, gcnwellness.com to get your free report, The Miracle of Garlic. Click gcnwellness.com.
Are you happy washing your hands with harsh chemicals? Are you happy doing laundry with detergents? Are you happy paying high prices? Find your happiness with Pure Soap. These all-natural, earth-friendly Pure Soaps are the very best you've ever used. Buy in bulk. Get a 12, 36, or 48-month supply, or get items individually and still save big. You're getting soap products twice as good as what you're using now, earth-friendly and natural soaps. Your family deserves the best. Happiness is 5starsoap.com. Why not put your money up the drain for a change? See them at 5starsoap.com or call 1-800-340-7091 for a catalog. Cal Ben Soap Company can save you thousands of dollars and give you good old-fashioned real soaps that are triple concentrated. Soaps made from vegetable and coconut oils. See their full selection of soaps at 5starsoap.com. That's F-I-V-E starsoap.com. Or call 1-800-340-7091 for a catalog.
Hi, Peter Vaccaro for ParanormalDate.com. Are you looking for love in all the wrong places? Now you have a chance to change that by signing up for free at ParanormalDate.com. This incredible dating site puts people of like minds together. People are interested in the strange, the unusual, mysteries, ghosts, UFOs, and the afterlife, and so much more. ParanormalDate.com was developed for you, people seeking a viable alternative to the other dating services. You can join for free by going to ParanormalDate.com, and if you decide you like it and want to connect with people, use the code GEORGE for a substantial discount. Mark Rawlings, president of ParanormalDate.com, says so many people hunger to share their experiences about the paranormal, the unexplainable, or the afterlife, and so much more, and this is the source for them to meet and share that common interest. So sign up for free at ParanormalDate.com, ParanormalDate.com, and use the code GEORGE if you decide to connect with someone you like.
Heart disease is on the rise. Clogged arteries, high blood pressure, and high cholesterol levels may not be fully detected by you, but the symptoms are there. Loss of energy, blood sugar spikes and drops, poor circulation, and irregular heartbeat are just a few of these that can alert you that something is wrong. Hear how Heart and Body Extract is making a difference in thousands of people's lives across America.
My blood pressure has normalized. My diabetes has totally improved.
Everyone is telling me now how much healthier I look, and I'm telling everyone how much healthier I feel. I recommend Heart and Body Extract to everyone.
Anybody over 40 in the North American continent should be using this product as a preventative to keep their cardiovascular system healthy.
Order your 2-month supply today by calling 866-295-5305. That's 866-295-5305. Or order online, hbextract.com. Heart and Body Extract, 866-295-5305 or hbextract.com.
Hi, this is Joshua P. Warren, author of The Poor Man's Paranormal, and you're listening to the Paracast, the gold standard of paranormal radio.
Enough of disclosure. Gone. Kaput. Not going to happen. In my lifetime.
Well, I don't think it will happen, but I seriously don't think we've finished with the subject. I think somebody's going to come forward in the next few months, a year, whatever, and say, oh, yeah, you know, disclosure's still on target. I've spoke to a high-ranking general, etc., etc. Whether they have or not, in some cases they may well have, but, you know, I think a lot of this is sort of dangling a carrot in front of ufology to make it look stupid when ufologists say, oh, I've been told it's coming, then it doesn't. I think there's that part to it as well, like the anticipation. And, you know, maybe there are genuine leaks, or leaks that appear genuine, I should say, put out to fire up ufology. And then when it never happens, people get cynical, they get skeptical, and they move away from the subject because nothing happens. And so I wouldn't be surprised if there isn't like an orchestrated program somewhere on the inside to say, hey, you know, it's time to tell the guys again that disclosures come in and we'll just disillusion them a bit more and a few people will walk away from it. I wouldn't be surprised if that doesn't go on as well a bit.
The book from Nick Redfern is called Shapeshifters, Morphing Monsters and Changing Cryptids. And one review on Amazon kind of sums it up. We live in a strange world. Do you explore the original legends where these things emerged from in this book?
Well, yeah, I mean, you know, a lot of books have been written over the years of shapeshifters with the vast majority of them focusing on tales of werewolves. Now, if you're going to do a book on shapeshifters, you've got to have at least a couple of chapters in there on shapeshifters. And I've got the first 3 chapters in the book do deal with that angle, you know, going back to sort of ancient tales, folklore, myths and legends of werewolves in the classic imagery that people talk about, you know, shape-shifting, full moon, silver bullets, the whole thing. But a lot of it is sort of based in, you know, folklore and mythology. But what I didn't want to do was just sort of go over old ground and just write a history of werewolves, because you would just be using, you know, the same old cases over and over again. So what I did was to sort of dig into a lot of my files where I got some really weird stories where people had said they'd seen shapeshifters in relation to cryptozoology, to the UFO subject, even in relation to Men in Black cases. But in a lot of these reports that I've got, which I talk about in the book, the shapeshifting isn't, sort of like, some guy bursting out of his clothes and, sprouting hair and fangs at the sight of a full moon and slaughtering a bunch of kids in the woods. It's actually, most of the cases aren't like that. It's almost what we might call like an energy-based shift, where these things can perhaps somehow alter their either alter their appearance to where we perceive them as having shape-shifted, where maybe they have the ability to make us see what they want us to see, or the idea of sort of the manipulation of matter even. For the most part, witnesses aren't talking about the traditional angle of, like as I said, that you would expect to see in some, like the Underworld movies or American Werewolf in London. There are very few cases like that, but there is still what we would call shape-shifting, but it's kind of alternative to what most people's perceptions really are.
Did you happen to catch the article that came out a couple, 3 days ago about the recent appearance of the monarch in England, Queen Elizabeth? All of a sudden, the Twitter was overrun with people claiming that as they were watching her on some TV coverage, all of a sudden people were freaking out, saying that she had shape-shifted momentarily into a reptilian form. And I forget what the Twitter tag was. It was hashtag reptilian queen, became one of the top 10 Twitter whatever they call tweets or whatever, or buzzes for a period of time after this allegedly had occurred. Did you hear about that? What do you think of that?
Yeah, I did. But, it's one of these things where it's almost like too good to be true. I would, I'm sort of sitting back and waiting for the whole thing to come tumbling out one way or another. Personally, I don't think the royal family are flesh-eating reptiles at all. I should stress, I have no love for the royal family. I think they're outmoded, outdated, and they just really exist to bring tourism and, the monetary aspect of tourism to feed the country, so to speak, or the economy. Because, we have a prime minister, which is like the equivalent of a president. It's not like the Queen or the royal family rule the country. We have political parties, Conservatives and Labour predominantly, that run the country. So, in other words, for me, I think they should be abolished. I think, the concept of a royal family is just so outdated. They just exist for no reason, really. So I'm not a fan of them, but I don't think they're sort of flesh-eating reptiles either. Then.
No, they just eat money. David Icke is one of the people responsible for this reptilian stuff.
Well, he is in relation to, the royal family angle, etc. But, throughout history, you can find tales of, of reptilian-type creatures. A good example, if you look at sort of Mesoamerican history, Quetzalcoatl, has been sort of perceived as like a reptilian-type creature. You can find stories kind of similar, like lizard people and so on, throughout, a lot of Fortean history. But as interesting as this break-in story is, I wouldn't be at all surprised if it comes down to the fact that, if somebody's got the footage or whatever, that it'll be manipulated footage. Sometimes these stories are interesting, sometimes they're too good to be true,
Obviously, we know, of course, that the monarchy in Great Britain is certainly outmoded. There's another story, by the way. Is Mark Zuckerberg actually a lizard?
No, I don't think so. I should stress, I actually, don't really put any faith, for the most part, in the angle of people shape-shifting into lizards. We're not talking about a strange creature that can alter its form. We're talking about people that can take on the forms of reptilians. That's where I have the problem with. Because I actually do have some cases in the book where people saw like a strange creature morph into a reptilian and then morph into something else, but there was no human component. But that's the thing that makes me very skeptical about these shape-shifting reptilians and the royal family is we're expected to believe that human beings can transform into reptiles. And for me, that's sort of too far. It's too extreme. The idea that a human being could take on the form of a reptilian. But I'm quite unminded on the idea that some of the paranormal things I talk about in the book could take on the form of a reptilian. So either it's not true, which I don't think it is, or, the only way I could see that the royal family could turn into reptiles would be if they weren't human to begin with, but they clearly are.
Well, I remember in the TV show True Blood, which you may or may not have seen, we'll have to break in a moment. The way they do it there is they would apparently take their clothes off because it was kind of a raunchy R-rated show, and then they'd become whatever they're going to become. But there was no limit in what the shapeshifter could become. It could become a werewolf, a wolf. It could become a bird. It could become all sorts of things. We have all sorts of things, by the way, on the After the Paracast podcast, an exclusive feature of the Paracast Plus. To learn more about it, go to plus.theparacast.com, plus.theparacast.com. Shape-shifting is our subject with Nick Redfern, with Gene and Chris. You're in
the Paracast.
Thank you for listening to GCN. Visit GCNlive.com today.
Do you need a website? Well, you can get a great deal on hosting services with Namecheap's legendary coupon code. They're offering substantial hosting discounts on shared hosting, business hosting, VPS hosting, reseller hosting, and even dedicated servers. Namecheap is preferred by millions. It's backed by a money-back guarantee. Use the coupon code LEGENDARY to cash in on the special deal at Namecheap.com, Namecheap.com.
First came Attack of the Rockoids, and it was a critically acclaimed success. And now there's The Coming of the Protectors. A former military intelligence man is contacted by a space woman in a dream that turns out to be a nightmare because evil forces on her distant planet are planning to conquer the Earth. This is gripping science fiction of the classic kind. Attack of the Rockoids and The Coming of the Protectors. Find out more at rockoids.com. That's rockoids, ROCKOIDS.com.
Hunters, anglers, campers, and survivalists. Get back to nature. Expand your horizons with the highest quality, most versatile, unique slingshots and sling bows on the market at slingbow.com. Sling bow products are compact and models start from just $17.98. They're perfect for your bug-out bag or storing in your vehicle. Give yourself and your loved ones the excitement and tradition of sling bow. A new frontier in archery and truly modern twist on this primitive survival tool. Feel the thrill only at slingbow.com.
Advertising your business with GCN is simple, effective, and more affordable than you might think. Visit advertise.gcnlive.com for more info. Take your business to the next level. That's advertise.gcnlive.com.
ProPure water filters. Most trusted, most tested. Right now, you can save 25% on the ProPure Nomad gravity system. Visit an authorized ProPure dealer for details. That's PROPUR.
This just in. Before your doctor gives you another antibiotic prescription that you don't want, get this free report, The Miracle of Garlic, your first home medicine. This free report is filled with easy kitchen remedies for common colds, flus, sore throats, ear infections, and more. Plus, learn to boost your immunity before you get sick. Go now to GCNwellness.com. Just like it sounds, GCNwellness.com to get your free report, The Miracle of Garlic. Click GCNwellness.com.
It's been said, any society is only 3 missed meals away from chaos. Those times may be near. Think about it. Our country faces multiple terrorist threats and aggressions from Russia and North Korea. Social unrest and violent marches yet again may lead to looting of stores and city shutdowns. And our crumbling infrastructure leaves our power grid vulnerable to long-term outages from a single cyber attack. When the chaos from any one of these threats arises, the government knows it can't provide during a widespread national emergency. That's why you need your own plan for self-reliance. That's where My Patriot Supply comes in. Get a 4-week survival food supply for only $99. That includes breakfast, lunches, and dinners. Order online at preparewithgcn.com. $99 for 4 weeks of survival food that tastes like homemade cooking and lasts up to 25 years from My Patriot Supply. Get your kits today at preparewithgcn.com. Free shipping is included. Preparewithgcn.com.
Water is the single most important thing your body needs, so you want to be sure it's the best for you and your family. Since 2005, thousands have depended on Berkey purified water. The Berkey Guy provides the lowest priced filtration systems in every size for incredibly delicious water now and in an emergency. Get to GoBerkey.com or call 877-886-3653. 877-886-3653. GoBerkey.com.
This is Jacques Vallée. You're listening to the Paracast, the gold standard of paranormal radio.
Now, I was expecting Chris to howl like a wolf. Werewolves of London. I like that song, though. The one from Warren Zevon. Except I always had the impression when I heard that song that he was kind of making it up as he was singing it. Don't know if I get that impression. All right, let's move into it. There is, however, a mental illness or something where someone is a lycanthrope, where actually they believe they turn into wolves.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's basically, a situation where you have this sort of psychological condition where people, over the centuries have believed they've transformed not just into sort of wolves, but into numerous different types of animals. For example, in West Africa, they have these leopard cults where in some cases, they dress up in leopard skins and, they fashion these leopard claws. But in other cases, they really believe, they get into altered states. They believe they can take on the form of a leopard, but then actually not physically changing. It's like it's a radical alteration in the mind. You can look at some of these stories of werewolves from the Middle Ages where, they were slaughtering children, etc., where they were clearly deranged serial killers who believed, they were transforming into various animals, including wolves. So, there's no doubt that certainly some of the stories of werewolves in the distant past and, up until 1600s, etc., were people with deranged, mental states. It's an important part of the story because it demonstrates this other side of shape-shifting, the idea that you actually don't change, but you believe you're changing. And, of course, people in that state can be highly dangerous. And, it's a fascinating part of shape-shifting, but which has its origins in the world of medicine rather than the world of the paranormal. There's various reasons as to what might have caused, someone to change. I mean, one example would be like ergot. If you get that into your system, that can cause graphic hallucination. And, people do believe, they're sort of transforming into bizarre creatures. And we don't really fully know why that is the response and the reaction that people have, but they do have it. So it's important to sort of make a distinction between what may be a supernatural change versus just some crazy guy rampaging through the woods and killing people, which a lot of those earlier cases were,
Also, I wonder here if this is a symptom of some kind of multiple personality disorder where someone doesn't physically change. They simply seem to become someone else and behave like somebody else. Then again, we can consider the strange case of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde to be a shapeshifter because you had two different men with somewhat different appearances as Dr. Henry Jekyll and, of course, Mr. Hyde.
Well, yeah, and I mean, a good example like that, when you talk about multiple personalities, you could have a multiple personality where one is more sort of animalistic. I mean, one of the most sort of infamous werewolves, if you like, of all time was a guy named Peter Stubb, who lived in Germany. And he was responsible for killing no end of young children. and he became known as a werewolf. I mean, that's literally what he became known as within Germany, this sort of deranged serial killer in the 1500s. But there was a werewolf angle to it, where he believed that he had this girdle that he would put round his middle, and then when he put it tight together, he supposedly changed into like a werewolf, and his body would be covered in fur, his hands would turn into paws with talons, and his face changed to like a wolf-like muzzle, kind of like a German shepherd. Now, there's no evidence that anybody saw him changing like that. Those were the rumors, and that's what he claimed. But if you read the story carefully, it's clear that he was the only one who ever definitively recognized the fact that he was changing. So everybody else kind of, saw him as this deranged character roaming the woods. So, I think cases like this, multiple personalities, where one personality is human and one is more savage, I think that actually ties in some way with, people have multiple personalities today, but for the most part, they're human personalities. But the idea that you could have multiple personalities and one or more of them being a savage creature, I think is not an impossibility.
Well, I certainly wonder how far afield this gets. Now, we think in terms of shapeshifters, well, werewolves, certainly. And we think of birds of some sort. But what range of creatures do we see in reports of shapeshifting?
Well, yeah, I mean, to talk about some sort of really weird ones, which really, unless they're hoaxes, and I don't believe they are, the only pathway they can go down is the paranormal pathway. I mean, I'll give you an example which actually ties in with a reptilian angle, which I don't dismiss because the other form was also supernatural. It actually came from a woman I interviewed when I was at the 2016 Mothman Festival in Point Pleasant. People, you got a table there, and people come up to you and share stories. And a woman came up to me. This was on the second day of the conference, and said, "Can I talk to you about something that happened to me?" I said, "Well, yes, sure." And it was a case involving the black-eyed children, which have these sort of semi-MIB type overtones attached to them. These pale-faced kids who knock on people's doors late at night, try and find a way into the home, etc., etc. And their kind of modus operandi, so to speak, is quite similar to the Men in Black. And, of course, they wear black hoodies, they look pale, and they try and find a way in, which is all characteristic of the Men in Black. And the Women in Black stories, too. And I expected that was what the story was going to be, because having written several books on the MIB, I just assumed she wanted to share a story related to a semi-connected angle, namely the black-eyed children. But the more she got into the story, I realized that it was going in a different direction. And she said that there was a knock on the door late at night, and, it was sort of 10 or 11 at night, and made her jump out of her skin. She was like, who the hell's that? So she went to the spy hole, and as she looked through the spy hole, the front door, she saw these two creepy kids dressed in black, looking really pale, with their heads face down, so that she couldn't actually see the faces properly. But then they looked up as if they had responded to her presence, and she saw the solid black eyes, which terrified her. And from there, she said suddenly they kind of like shimmered in a heat haze. When you're driving on the road and the road's red hot, and you kind of get that shimmering effect. It was like that. And she said they literally transformed into like 7 foot tall to 8 foot tall reptilian type creatures, and then vanished. She was like plunged into a state of like complete hysteria, she said, and she was still traumatized by it, long after she told me the story. Of course, one of the big ironies was that it actually happened in Point Pleasant, which is home to the Mothman, another weird creature. When we were sat there, chatting about it, she didn't come across as anyone, didn't come across crazy, didn't ask for money or anything to tell the story. She just genuinely was worried and wanted answers, could I help her with any answers? But I mean, that's a classic example of where I think it's more feasible, where you have a creature that is already paranormally themed to begin with, namely the Black-Eyed Children, and then takes on another shape-shifting form. You know, when it begins as something that's non-human, I think that makes it more viable, you know, in terms of having the ability to take on multiple forms. I mean, I know, you know, Chris will know this with his research as well. I mean, the skinwalker, you know, can take on multiple forms and has these, you know, definitive kind of paranormal aspects to it. So I think, you know, this story, I included it because it was such a fascinating and weird one, an alternative that people just probably wouldn't have heard of before. You know, the idea of the Black-Eyed Children being shapeshifters, which makes me wonder, what is their real form? You know, have we ever seen them in their real form?
No. You mentioned skinwalkers, Nick. Were you able to come up with any new sets of information about them? There's really not that much out there if you attempt to research the subject. Dene cultures, the Navajo and Apache, are quite superstitious and very closed-mouthed about a lot of that information.
I did give an overview of the skinwalker issue, you know, the phenomenon. But yeah, you're right. I didn't really come up with anything new on that particular aspect at all. But I felt, you know, I had to include it.
We've got more to come on Shapeshifters with Nick Redfern, Gene, and Chris. You're in the Paracast.
Thank you for listening to GCN. Visit GCNlive.com today.
Attack of the Rockoids has been well received by critics and readers alike. It's a thrill-a-minute story you'll never forget. A former U.S. military intelligence officer is haunted by intense dreams about a beautiful woman pleading for his help after a terrible battle in outer space. But the dreams turn out to be true and thrust him into a telepathic love affair with a woman whose faraway planet is intent on destroying the Earth. And now the gripping tale continues in The Coming of the Protectors. It's the second book of the Rockoids trilogy, a galaxy-spanning adventure that pits our hapless heroes against powerful, fanatical enemies that threaten the lives of freedom-loving beings everywhere. Attack of the Rockoids and The Coming of the Protectors, classic science fiction at its best, available now. For more details, visit rockoids.com. That's ROCKOIDS.com.
Dr. Carolyn Dean wants you to have a free chapter of her new book, The Magnesium Miracle 2nd Edition, and it's available at magmiracle.com. In your free chapter, Dr. Carolyn Dean explains how magnesium is essential to support the structure and function and overall health of your body. Your free chapter is your guide to learn how to support your heart, bone, metabolic, lung, and mental health with this powerful mineral. The Magnesium Miracle 2nd Edition is available on Amazon, but right now get a free chapter at magmiracle.com, spelled M-A-G, miracle.com.
Want revenge on the common housefly? Well, after 10,000 years, someone has finally come up with a better way. The Bug Assault, a miniaturized shotgun, which utilizes ordinary table salt as ammunition. Non-toxic and no batteries required. $39.95 plus shipping and handling. Use discount code GCN and receive 15% off your purchase at bugassault.com. Fire your fly swatter and get your Bug Assault today.
Welcome back to the Paracast, the gold standard of paranormal radio. And now, here's Gene Steinberg.
We've got Nick Redfern. The book is about shapeshifters with Gene and Chris looking over all the possibilities. Now, obviously, shape-shifting is just used everywhere. In comic books, it's used. There's a character called Martian Manhunter that can assume any shape. They even have a version of that on TV. So everywhere you look, shape-shifting is fairly common. But it creates the ultimate paranoia, too, which is if someone or something can change its shape, you may be talking to somebody you know, but that person is really who knows what.
Well, I mean, I've got a few stories like that where, you know, people have said they were talking to someone and they kind of, shimmered and changed slightly. Not sort of, massively, but to the point where I've got one case, for example, which isn't in the book, but it's one case that was given to me literally within a week of when the book came out. And the witness said that she saw this, or talking to this guy, and she was actually sat in Central Park, and he came and sat next to her and got her engaged in a conversation. It seemed to be like a casual conversation about UFOs, which she had a deep interest in. They got talking, and she was a little bit excited and intrigued, but also kind of concerned by the fact that, of all people possible, he come and sat by her and then started a conversation about UFOs. And she said he looked completely normal, but then suddenly she described almost as like a dizzy spell, as if like he kind of shook, but like impossibly fast. If you shook your hand really fast and it blurred, it was like that for about 2 or 3 seconds. And she said he looked the same, but he looked a lot thinner, and his face was sort of pale, and his hair had gone from being sort of normal to looking like really greasy and oily and dirty. She said that he had almost like a shocked look on his face, as if he realized that she realized that he just kind of morphed a little bit. And she got up and left. She was like in shock. So, cases like that, where you have someone who seems to, sort of change, but not change, to the extent in the traditional folklore. But it is still a kind of shapeshifter. It's a shame I didn't have that one in time for the book, because it was like a really kind of creepy story,
Well, I can take my magic ring and say Shazam and become someone else. You see, shapeshifting is common in the comic books. I want to ask you here, what is the most unusual creature said to be a shapeshifter?
Oh, well, I mean, the one that perhaps a lot of people don't think of, which is a phenomenon that I've got probably 15 or 16 stories related to, is in relation to Bigfoot, of all things. Now, most cryptozoologists take the view that the Bigfoot creatures are the unknown or unclassified equivalent of something like a North African gorilla or whatever, They're just some type of ape that we haven't found yet, haven't classified, etc., etc. But if you look at Bigfoot history, you do find a lot of really weird cases where people claim that they've seen Bigfoot vanish in a flash of light, or it's kind of like just melted away. People claim that these things are impervious to bullets, that, they have this here 1 second, gone the next second angle to them. But there's also this shapeshifter angle. Now, I'll give you one example of how this kind of works. I live just outside the city of Dallas. Now, if I drive about 4 or 5 hours, maybe a little bit more sort of south, you reach the city of Houston. Well, east of Houston, about 40 miles, you've got a massive area of forest land called the Big Thicket. Everybody thinks Texas is like desert and cactus. It's not. You get outside Dallas and you're heading towards Louisiana. The forests there are gigantic. It's different trees, obviously, to what you get in the Pacific Northwest, but it's still, gigantic forest land crossing with marshland and swampy land as well. Now, the Big Thicket has a road that runs through it called Bragg Road, but the locals either refer to it as Ghost Road or Ghost Light Road, depending on who you ask. And they call it that because throughout the last few centuries, people who've lived in that area, including the original settlers, reported seeing these strange balls of light flitting through the Big Thicket, and also particularly along this stretch known as Bragg Road. And people said, they've seen them any size from like a tennis ball to like a beach ball. But there are a few cases on record from people in that area who said that they saw one of these balls of light morph into like a 7 to 8 foot tall Bigfoot, and also vice versa. And there are a few cases like that I also talk about in the book, where balls of light transformed into other creatures, where it turned into like this sort of writhing, wriggly worm type creature. But the Bigfoot ones are kind of the most controversial, because you've got something the size of like a ball of light, which appears to be some kind of intelligent energy, because they certainly react to the presence of people, sometimes moving closer, sometimes moving away as you approach them. So there seems to be an intelligence there. But the idea of, a ball of energy, an intelligent ball of energy the size of a tennis ball, suddenly morphing into an 8-foot-tall Bigfoot-type creature, that's kind of beyond our physics and reality to even comprehend it. But the important thing is there are more than a few independent cases that absolutely are almost identical in nature and appearance.
In these kinds of stories, Nick, as you probably found out, are more common than you would actually suspect. In the Southwest, in particular, I've run into a number of accounts of people claiming humans, witches in their description, sort of transforming or mutating into balls of energy, and vice versa. There is a tradition, in southern Colorado, northern New Mexico, among the Hispanic population of witches, when they're in a hurry, being able to turn into balls of light so that they can zip from where they are to a destination where they have to get there quickly. And, these stories, you try to obviously research them and try to come up with some sort of historical, try to track them down. Where did these traditions begin? How long have they been around? Is there any, how many kinds of variations do you have? And they generally do tend to be fairly consistent in terms of the details. People explaining, often asked, well, where did you first hear about this? And of course, oftentimes it's a grandparent that would mention this initially. But did you find that there is there appears to be kind of a traditional set of knowledge that tends to be quite similar from region to region or from type to type?
Well, yes, certainly, with these balls of light, I mean, you can find stories like this everywhere. For example, fairies were noted, for being shapeshifters. I'm not talking like sort of the traditional Christmas card image that people have today of fairies. You go back 500 years, they were quite sinister, dwarfish, wizened, old, creepy-looking characters that would sort of live in, underground or under mounds and things like that. And of course, not only were fairies said to be shapeshifters, but people would often see these so-called fairy lights around them and things like that. Another example, which is another creepy one, is comes from England in relation to a crop circle. A friend of mine, Matthew Williams, was in a crop circle back in the 1990s and saw these three balls of light, small balls of light, approach the crop circle in a triangular formation. And we get a lot of these balls of light seen in relation to crop circles in England. This was sort of the dead of night, no illumination other than these three lights, which hovered over the crop circle, then dropped to the ground. And then within seconds, Matthew heard like this rustling as if the corn was being sort of torn up and twisted and moved. He was with a friend, and they suddenly heard this sort of deep, sort of dangerous sounding growl, almost as if the ball of light had descended into the field and then transformed into some sort of creature which they couldn't see, but they just, fled the air at high speed.
More to come with Nick Redfern and Gina and Chris. You're in
the Paracast.
Attack of the Rockoids has been well received by critics and readers alike. It's a thrill-a-minute story you'll never forget. A former U.S. military intelligence officer is haunted by intense dreams about a beautiful woman pleading for his help after a terrible battle in outer space. But the dreams turn out to be true and thrust him into a telepathic love affair with a woman whose faraway planet is intent on destroying the Earth. And now the gripping tale continues in The Coming of the Protectors. It's the second book of the Rockoids trilogy, a galaxy-spanning adventure that pits our hapless heroes against powerful, fanatical enemies that threaten the lives of freedom-loving beings everywhere. Attack of the Rockoids and The Coming of the Protectors. Classic science fiction at its best. Available now. For more details, visit rockoids.com. That's ROCKOIDS.com.
Attention type 2 diabetics. If you or a loved one has taken Invokana, Invocomet, or Invocomet XR or other inhibitors for type 2 diabetes and suffered amputation of the toes, feet, or legs, you may be entitled to substantial financial compensation. The FDA has warned that Invokana, Invocomet, or Invocomet XR and other inhibitors for type 2 diabetes cause an increased role in amputations of the toes, feet, and legs. If you or a loved one has taken Invokana, Invocomet, or Invocomet XR or other inhibitors for type 2 diabetes and suffered amputation of the toes, feet, or legs, you may be entitled to substantial financial compensation. Act now. Time is limited to file a claim. For a free consultation and free information, call Injury Help Desk at 800-475-7607. That's 800-475-7607. Again, 800-475-7607. Call now. This is an advertisement. Paid non-attorney spokesperson. www.injuryhelpdesk.com is responsible for this advertisement. Principal office, Las Vegas, Nevada.
Hello, Mr. Anderson. The NSA has noticed how much time you spend on conservative news sites. We have no choice but to consider you a domestic terrorist.
Tired of your internet activity being monitored by Big Brother? Get virtualshield.com, the world's easiest to use virtual private network. Browse the web anonymously, leaving pesky advertisers and spies in the dust. Get started today at virtualshield.com. Take advantage of our free 30-day trial. virtualshield.com. You have the right to remain private.
Hello, I'm Mike Lindell, the inventor of MyPillow, and like all of you out there, I had problems sleeping. Pillows would go flat, I would flip-flop all night long, I would wake up with a sore neck, maybe a headache, or feel like I needed a nap even though I slept 8 hours. When I invented MyPillow, I wanted it to where you could move the patented fill to give you the exact support you need as an individual, regardless of sleep position. MyPillow will get you into that deep REM sleep faster, and you will stay there longer. It's not about how much time we spend in bed, it's about how much of that quality sleep we get. I do all of my own manufacturing right here in the United States. I have a 10-year warranty. You can wash and dry my pillow, and I give you a 60-day money-back guarantee, so you have nothing to lose. And here's my best offer ever. You can buy one of my pillows and get one absolutely free.
Go to mypillow.com or call 800-870-0305 and use promo code GCN. That's mypillow.com or 800-870-0305 with promo code GCN.
In an emergency, you need a fire now. But what if the wood is wet? No problem for InstaFire. Our non-toxic fire starter packs lights wet wood, floats, and can even burn on water or in any weather. Sustains winds up to 30 miles per hour, and each pouch weighs only 1.75 ounces. Need an emergency or camp stove? Get the InstaFire Inferno stove that boils 20 ounces of water in under 3 minutes with controllable heat and temps from 425 to 1500 degrees. Free shipping. Go to instafire.com and use discount code RADIO30 up to 3 times for 30% off your order. InstaFire. Fire in an instant.
We'd like to hear from you. If you have a comment or question about the Paracast, send it to news@theparacast.com. That's news@theparacast.com. And don't forget to visit our famous Paracast community forums at forum.theparacast.com.
I just think Chris is about to turn. Any time now. I have no idea what he'll become. Nick Redfern, please continue the story.
Well, yeah, Matthew and he was in the field with a friend. They just, fled the area at high speed, not sure what this was. One of the interesting things is I've probably got 4 or 5 cases, and I know a guy named Marcus Matthews who wrote a book called Big Cats in Britain has reports too. People who claim to have seen the so-called alien big cats in crop circles, these out-of-place, mysterious, large black cats that people report all across the UK every year, and we never catch them. And people have seen them in crop circles. So I do wonder, granted it is speculation, admittedly, I do wonder if these balls of light, they hit the field that Matthew was in, and then there was this sudden growl, even though they couldn't see anything. Is it possible that the lights had transformed into these, these black cats that people have legitimately seen in crop circles? And the other one that I talk about in the book, which is very similar, relates to the contactee movement. Not one of the sort of the most famous contactees of the 1950s, but a guy who was sort of in the second wave, so to speak, named Orfeo Angelucci. He claimed that in the early 50s he had these UFO sightings and then encounters with the entities on the UFOs, like the classic Space Brothers, when it all began. And he claimed that his experiences all, for the most part, occurred near an old bridge in Los Angeles, and that he would feel compelled to go out to this old bridge, go under the lower part of it and just wait in the darkness. And in his book, he actually wrote several books, but in one of his books, I think it's the Son of the Sun, it talks about how he would wait for the Space Brothers to turn up. But when they arrived, they would not arrive in like a gleaming flying saucer out of the sky. He would see these little balls of light come towards him. They would sort of speak to him in his mind, and then the balls of light would transform into like the classic Space Brother, with the long blonde hair and the tight-fitting flight suit kind of thing, and looking very human-like, but also slightly not quite human. And Angelucci, spoke quite extensively as to how they would sort of change form from something that was physical and looked to be flesh and blood into a ball of light, and then they would exit by turning again into a ball of light and then shooting away into the sky. People might say, well, this is just totally outlandish and impossible. But the important thing is, you've got different countries and cultures. You've got Los Angeles with Orfeo Angelucci. You've got the big thickets in Texas, and you've got crop circles in England, all tied to balls of light taking on different forms. And I think that's an important thing when you know the scope and scale of this particular aspect of shapeshifting.
Okay, this is what I wonder about here, whether UFOs themselves are examples of shapeshifting, as you're talking about there. What we see as a flying craft, that's not what it really is. It's for our benefit or the best we can detect based on the limits of our senses. And the same thing would be true about the entities, and that even goes back to the movie Contact, where the Jodie Foster character meets what might be E.T., and he says, I'm coming to you in the form of your father so you can accept my appearance.
Yeah, that's a good point you bring up, because I'll tell you for why. Because if you look at most of the UFO reports on record, and certainly the vast majority of the photographs, yes, there are a lot of pictures, photos of UFOs that look similar, but there's always something that's a bit different. And the idea that every UFO that visits us should look different, to me, is just impossible if they're nuts and bolts craft. They would be out of a mold or whatever. So I think, the idea that we are dealing with shape-shifting craft and entities is quite viable, because if you go back to the early days of ufology, or way before that, in the 1800s, we had the Phantom airships. In the 40s, during the war, it was the Foo Fighters. 46, the Ghost Rockets. 47 onwards, flying saucers. 80s onwards, it was the flying triangles. To begin with, in ufology, there weren't really much in the way of entities. Then in the 50s, there were Space Brothers. Then you had the creatures that Betty and Barney Hill saw, which weren't greys, despite what some people have said. They were more human-like. Then you had the greys. Then you had the reptilians, the men in black, the black-eyed children, all of which are somehow connected. You can make a good case that the phenomenon is constantly with us, but it's constantly also changing its appearance. So, you could make a good case that the entire ufological scene is sort of being hit by shapeshifters.
Well, certainly with UFO abductions, that would be a singular example, I think, of something of that nature.
Yeah, and of course, I think one of the important things is that many abduction cases seem to occur when the person's in an altered state, them being susceptible to different realities, and possibly even, that the shifting may actually even be in their minds even. That could add an entirely new angle to it, where the reality itself is kind of shifted for the benefits of the person. So sort of shape-shifting can mean a lot of different things to a lot of people. It's a term that people associate with werewolves, but you can actually apply it to so many different ways of supernaturally changing, so to speak. I'll give you another example, which is like really high on the creepy levels, is that, and I talk about this because it's kind of connected to shape-shifting, but not where the creature literally shape-shifts into a person or vice versa, but where it mimics a person. And I'll explain what I mean by that. I've got a lot of cases on record of creatures like Bigfoot and elsewhere in the world, in relation to the orang pendek in Sumatra, the yowie in Australia, where people have been out in the woods and they kind of get a weird vibe, and then suddenly they hear like the distressing cries of a baby, like a human baby. And obviously, they're like, oh my God, somebody's dumped a baby in the woods or whatever. So they go looking, and they get deeper and deeper into the woods, and they can still hear this baby crying, but it's always a little bit further away from them. And then suddenly they hear this sort of guttural growling and see this shadowy form loom into view, as if these Bigfoot-type creatures can literally mimic babies. It's not a physical transformation, but it's in one sense it is a transformation, or a perceived transformation, but mimicking as a means to draw people into the woods. And I've got some really, like I said, really creepy stories like that, where people felt something was drawing them and pulling them into the woods, and doing so under the sort of the camouflage of the cries of a baby. And who knows what would have happened to them if they continued looking and continued going further and further into the woods. Was it a way to lure them in and kill them? And in a worst case scenario, you become dinner or whatever. But I talk about one case in the book, one of many, not too far from where I actually live, where the town of Ennis has a tradition of a Bigfoot-type creature that was seen, and is still seen now by an old bridge in the area. And there's a cemetery very nearby called Crier Creek Cemetery. And the legend is that a woman lost a child there, and every so often you'll hear the child crying. But it's intriguing that you have a Bigfoot story attached to the same area as well.
With Gene, Chris, and Nick, you're in
the Paracast. Ho ho.
You are listening to GCN. Visit GCNlive.com today.
This just in. Before your doctor gives you another antibiotic prescription that you don't want, get this free report, The Miracle of Garlic, your first home medicine. This free report is filled with easy kitchen remedies for common colds, flus, sore throats, ear infections, and more. Plus, learn to boost your immunity before you get sick. Go now to GCNwellness.com. Just like it sounds, GCNwellness.com to get your free report, The Miracle of Garlic. Click GCNwellness.com.
In an emergency, you need a fire now. But what if the wood is wet? No problem for InstaFire. Our non-toxic fire starter packs lights wet wood, floats, and can even burn on water or in any weather. Sustains winds up to 30 miles per hour, and each pouch weighs only 1.75 ounces. Need an emergency or camp stove? Get the InstaFire Inferno stove that boils 20 ounces of water in under 3 minutes with controllable heat and temps from 425 to 1500 degrees. Free shipping. Go to instafire.com and use discount code RADIO30 up to 3 times for 30% off your order. InstaFire. Fire in an instant.
Kiyosaki, Rogers, and Schiff all concur there's an economic calamity that'll be facing this country. My question to you is, do you know when, and are you prepared? Most people don't, but my friends over at Republic Monetary Exchange have been leading experts in precious metals to help you offset the coming economic collapse. Right now, for a limited time, they have a free book called The 10 Reasons You Should Own Gold. You simply need to give them a call at 888-772-2929 to get that in your hands. Do not allow the insiders to do what they did to you in 2008, putting your IRAs, 401ks, and savings in jeopardy. You need this book, and you need it now. The 10 Reasons You Should Own Gold. Call 888-772-2929. That's 888-772-2929. There's a reason that the largest investment banking company in the world, JP Morgan, just purchased another 50 million ounces of silver. This free book will explain it. 888-772-2929.
Have you checked your Google search results lately? Search results are usually the first impression that people form of you or your business, so make sure that they create a positive impression with ReputationDefender.com. What the internet says about you can have a big impact on your life and your livelihood, even if it's not true. Fortunately, you can now control how you look online and in online search results with ReputationDefender.com. Call 800-831-0771 now. That's 800-831-0771 for your free Reputation reputation analysis. If you have negative material from an ex-employee, upset patient, or former client, newspaper article, legal issue, social media, or other source showing up in your search results, you can combat it with ReputationDefender.com. Our dedicated experts in patented technology can help make your online search results look their best. Call 800-831-0771 to learn more. 800-831-0771. That's 800-831-0771. Or visit ReputationDefender.com.
Investing is a long-term process. How many times can you think of in the last decade that the stock market has destroyed retirement funds for people just like you and me? For your existing IRA, you need the security that gold has provided for centuries. Remember, gold has never been worth zero. Capital Gold would like to introduce you to the Home Storage Gold IRA. It's a self-directed IRA set up with all the protection and tax benefits of an LLC. But the big difference in this IRA is you invest in gold and you hold it in your possession. You can't do that with stocks. That's security. You can transfer any type of IRA hassle-free in days. Please call right now and learn more, and we'll waive the $500 setup fee and give you a free safe to store your gold. 800-535-7789. 800-535-7789. 800-535-7789. That's 800-535-7789.
This is Jacques Vallée. You're listening to the Paracast, the gold standard of paranormal radio.
Okay, so the cemetery, the Bigfoot. It's like putting all the ingredients together, Nick, to come up with the most incredible possibilities.
Yeah, there's a lot of talk, over the years that Bigfoot uses humans sometimes as a food source. Well, what better way to do that than to try and mimic and successfully mimic a human baby, which, most people would naturally try and go and help it and look for it. But you just find yourself getting more and more pulled into the woods and lost, and then before you know it, you're on the spit or whatever.
Well, everywhere they focus on stuff like that, it's one of the singular obsessions in sci-fi, in fantasy, in horror, that somebody is not the person you think they are.
I mean, obviously there is a folkloric aspect to this, but like I said earlier, you often find, in fact almost always, that when you have folklore, myths, legends, anecdotes, there's usually some degree of reality that kick-started the mystery in the first place, or the legend in the first place. And I think that part of that's due to human nature, but it's also partly due to the fact that we're talking about real phenomena. I mean, when I was talking about the black-eyed kids, the reptilian angle, and the woman from Point Pleasant, well, we have Mothman in Point Pleasant. Now, when the sightings were at their height, sort of 66, 67, which, we're coming up to 50 years since the bridge collapse in Point Pleasant now, that'll be 50 years in December. What's interesting is that not everybody described Mothman in the same way. Some described it as a definitive flying humanoid. Others described it as like a gigantic bird. Others suggested it was more like almost like a pterodactyl type creature. Now, granted, it would be difficult to sort of see these things late at night, but I mean, we had daylight sightings, and in some cases, people said, yeah, it just looked like a gigantic bird, almost like the thunderbird of Native American legend. But other people said, no, it didn't look like a bird. It was absolutely a flying humanoid with wings on his back. So either people were hallucinating, getting it wrong, or, as I point out in the book, maybe even Mothman, was a shapeshifter. Granted, it was always, a flying shapeshifter, but when you have people who claim to have seen this thing close up, and some were sure it was a bird-like, and others were sure it was human-like, but more like a gargoyle, either that they were massively wrong, or there's a bigger picture going on there.
Let me ask you a very, very direct question before we go on with more stories. Do you think any of these cases is real, or are most of them just people seeing things?
Well, it's one of these things, and I'm sure, Chris has experienced this as well. When you interview people over the course of not just days, weeks, months, years, but decades, you do become a good judge of character, and you know what to look for. I mean, everybody at some point, whether it's in ufology, cryptozoology, ghost hunting or whatever, you're always going to find someone who fakes a story and who wants their bit of 15 minutes of fame and, endless dollars or whatever. That always happens, and I'm sure there's no one who hasn't come across at least one hoax event. But in saying that, I never really honestly didn't get any kind of vibe from the people I interviewed for this particular book who I felt were crazy or lying or fantasy prone. They just seemed genuinely either puzzled, excited, or deeply worried by what they'd seen and were just looking for answers. And I think, in fairness, when you said, is it just people seeing things? In fairness, I think even I understand why people might think that, because the angle of shape-shifting is so bizarre and unlikely, and it's so inextricably tied to like the world of Hollywood and ancient tales of werewolves that people ignore it or think, well, this can't be, but they can accept, the idea of aliens crashing at Roswell or whatever. So I understand it. It's because the weirder it is, the less likely people are to believe it. But as I said, when you find these intriguing little strands that parallel another case, like I said, the mimicking of the babies, which you can find all around the world, the balls of light transforming into different creatures, you see these patterns, and it's when you see the patterns, then you realize there's a pattern,
Yeah, I agree, Nick. And I also have a suspicion that because this type of report is, getting up into the realm of some of the most unbelievable types of accounts, you would almost kind of suspect that perhaps there's a lot more experiences, people having experiences out there, a lot more than are being reported, just simply because they're so fantastic that people, would, I think, be more hesitant to come forward and report, events like this. So, we may be seeing actually tip of the iceberg, and there may be many more reports than are actually being filed.
Well, that's a good point, and I'll give you sort of a bit of an analogy to that. Having done several books on the Men in Black, I get a lot of reports all the time of Men in Black stories, but more than a few people have said, I'm paraphrasing here, but it's basically the same phrase. They've said, I didn't want to report it because everybody, thinks of the Hollywood movies, and they think I just over-imagined watching one of these movies. And so they wouldn't talk about it because there was this sort of fear that, they'd be labelled cranks or crazy because, they watch too many movies. And I think it's kind of a similar thing here. People don't talk about it, not because of the movie angle, but because it is way out. And I think anything that's paranormal is bizarre and strange, but there is, a case where you can make an argument tipping the scales into really weird domains like shape-shifting. I understand why people wouldn't come forward. I'm not sure I would come forward if I said, I'd seen a werewolf and then the werewolf changed into a ball of light. People say, what's Nick been smoking or injecting, Even I might say nothing. So I think the weirder the case, that, it sometimes it's a benefit if people come forward, but I understand the impulse not to speak about it as well. So.
The one, I think, as I mentioned before, the subculture in the area where I was investigating in the 90s there in southern Colorado and northern New Mexico, the whole idea of shape-shifting, I think, is a little bit more, it's more plausible, I think, generally in people's minds there, especially in the Hispanic population, because there is a tradition of brujos and brujas being able to actually do that, to change into other forms. So I think that perhaps in an area like, the geographically rather, you may have possibly less reluctance to come forward and actually more reports than, let's say, where you are or, in any other part of the country, basically. So, I think some of it does have to do with with how these types of phenomenal events or categories of phenomenal events are actually perceived within the subculture. And I think that in the case of shapeshifting, there's less reluctance for people in the San Luis Valley, for instance, to come forward. I've never heard that kind of report now that I'm thinking about it. Maybe once or twice have I heard a report of a physical human type shape-shifting that was not related to a claim of witches or the occult. And again, we're focusing more, I think, on the human type accounts, where in ufology there's thousands of cases of objects that appear to morph from one shape into another, and it's a fairly common description. And I'm sure you found this as well, Nick, that people say 1 second it was it looked like this, and the next second it transformed or morphed into and shifted into another shape.
We're going to morph into something right now with Nick, Gene, and Chris. You're in
the Paracast.
Thank you for listening to GCN. Be sure to visit GCNlive.com today.
Do you need a website? Well, you can get a great deal on hosting services with Namecheap's legendary coupon code. They're offering substantial hosting discounts on shared hosting, business hosting, VPS hosting, reseller hosting, and even dedicated servers. Namecheap is preferred by millions. It's backed by a money-back guarantee. Use the coupon code LEGENDARY to cash in on the special deal at Namecheap.com, Namecheap.com.
First came Attack of the Rockoids, and it was a critically acclaimed success. And now there is The Coming of the Protectors. A former military intelligence man is contacted by a space woman in a dream that turns out to be a nightmare because evil forces on her distant planet are planning to conquer the Earth. This is gripping science fiction of the classic kind. Attack of the Rockoids and The Coming of the Protectors. Find out more at rockoids.com. That's Rockoids, ROCKOIDS.com.
Water is the single most important thing your body needs, so you want to be sure it's the best for you and your family. Since 2005, thousands have depended on Berkey purified water. The Berkey Guy provides the lowest priced filtration systems in every size for incredibly delicious water now and in an emergency. Get to GoBerkey.com or call 877-886-3653. 877-886-3653. GoBerkey.com.
Want revenge on the common housefly? Well, after 10,000 years, someone has finally come up with a better way. The Bug Assault, a miniaturized shotgun, which utilizes ordinary table salt as ammunition. Non-toxic and no batteries required. $39.95 plus shipping and handling. Use discount code GCN and receive 15% off your purchase at bugassault.com. Fire your fly swatter and get your Bug Assault today.
Actual testimonials from real Numana customers.
I've tried all kinds of food storage, and Numana is by far the best.
I'm a single mom with 2 teenage boys and a full-time job. I don't always have time to cook a 4-course meal. That's where Numana has been such a blessing. I can spend less time in the kitchen and more time on what matters most, like helping with homework.
Find out for yourself. Order online at thepowermall.com. That's thepowermall.com. Numana is
food stores I love to eat. Yum!
Thepowermall.com.
Message and data rates may apply.
Oh my gosh, that's Frank Thomas. No. Yes, that's him. Go ahead. Excuse me, are you Frank Thomas?
Yes, I am.
I bet you get recognized a lot.
I was a pretty good ball player.
You were?
Some people thought so.
Sorry, we recognize you from those Nugenix commercials.
Oh, yeah? That's great.
So does Nugenix really work?
Oh, yeah. I really can feel the difference. My workouts are better, and I feel a lot more energetic.
I wish my husband would use Nugenix.
It's so easy to get started. All you have to do is send one simple text.
Text the word PRIME44 to 425
42424 for a complimentary bottle of award-winning Nugenics, the #1 selling free testosterone booster at GNC. Its unique man-boosting formula is powered by Testofen, a patented key ingredient clinically researched to help a man feel stronger, leaner, more energetic, and more passionate.
And you're going to like the difference, too.
Text PRIME44 to 42424 for a complimentary bottle of Nugenics. Samples are not available in stores. Text PRIME44 to 42424.
You haven't experienced yogurt until you've tried a Mossy, embodying health and flavor in a true whole milk, green-fed dairy beverage. Every sip pays homage to our old world cows and the ancient culturing methods their milk benefits from. With over 30 probiotics, a Mossy's undeniably nutritious, refined, cultured sensation bolsters your health and awakens your passion for dairy. A Mossy's so good, and you need to try it. Contact your Youngevity distributor or call 877-878-4203 or go to gcnteam.com.
This is Micah Hanks of the Gray Alien Report, and you're listening to the Paracast, the gold standard of paranormal radio.
You see, Chris is almost finished morphing into something. What will he be? We're all trying to figure that out. So in terms of shapeshifters, Nick Redfern, what are the most dangerous shapeshifters of all?
Well, certainly one of them I would put in that category would be the what are known as the phantom black dogs. Now, you can find stories of so-called phantom black dogs all around the world where they're described as being much larger than normal dogs, and they have these fiery, blazing red eyes. The reason why they're so dangerous is because, according to the old legends, that if you were to see one, either you or a family member was about to die. Now, these stories proliferated to such an extent centuries ago in the UK that it actually prompted Arthur Conan Doyle to write his Sherlock Holmes novel, The Hound of the Baskervilles. That story is actually based on an existing tale of one of the phantom black dogs that a friend of Doyle's told him, and he thought, well, I could turn this into a cool Sherlock Holmes story, although he probably didn't use the word cool. So in other words, these stories proliferate. But what's interesting about these black dogs is that in some of them, they're described as having the ability to expand and shrink in size, which is like really weird. You're shape-shifting, not into another form, but you're literally shape-shifting your body, or the creature is shape-shifting its body from small to large, large to small, etc. And there are some cases where people have seen these phantom black dogs raise up onto their back legs and almost sort of walk like a human, as if the legs kind of snap into almost like a human mode, but they still have like the paws hanging down. If you've got a pet dog and you sit him on his back legs, the front paws hang down. And that's how people have described them. But they have this sort of very much dog-like appearance, but walking like a human. The black dogs, as I said, they change from 4 limbs to 2 limbs, and they change in size. So there's like multiple shifting going on there. But, when you specifically talked about the dangerous angle of all this, you've got the issue of like it being a precursor to death, that kind of thing. If you to see one of these things, almost like the world's worst kind of grim reaper or something along those lines. If you look at some of these stories, I mean, they are definitively dangerous. I don't really know anyone who's had what you would call a positive experience with any of these things, despite the multiple different forms. Not a single one of them is sort of friendly. I mean, another dangerous one that sort of also ties in with Native American law, but certainly far more north, would be the Wendigo, this sort of cannibalistic type creature, which is it's kind of confusing. Some of the tribes, it's sort of like a person who has resorted to cannibalism, then takes on more of an animalistic form, and then there's a belief that a Wendigo can actually sort of not so much shape-shift, but actually get into you. So in other words, its character shape-shifts into your mind. So you, in a sense, this is like a psychological shapeshift rather than a physical shapeshift. But the Wendigo, this is sort of perceived as like a very dangerous, deadly creature. And I sometimes do wonder if some of the legends of the Wendigo could have been based on ancient sightings of Bigfoot-type creatures that, the stories maybe have got distorted over time, so to speak.
Yeah, and also there's the possibility that the arrival of Apaches coming down from Alaska in the 13 and 1400s, by the time they made it all the way down through Canada, they had adopted a socially acceptable form of cannibalism. And there's one kind of revisionist school of thought that could relate the Wendigo to actually being an Apache, running through the village, quickly grabbing a kid and keeping on going to bring the kid back for dinner. So there's several ways to look at the Wendigo phenomenon, and that particular possible explanation is not out of the realm of question.
No, you're right. And I think, again, this sort of, it demonstrates how careful we need to be when we're looking at sort of particularly ancient stories and legends and how we perceive them. Was it a distortion of something far more down to earth, or was it something that was exactly as it was explained? I mean, another example of like a dangerous one would be, of all things possible, the Loch Ness Monster or monsters. Today, people call them Nessies, but if you go back to at least sort of the 1600s, you find stories from multiple Scottish lakes. And for people who don't know, the word loch is just a Scottish term that means lake. But multiple Scottish lochs, including Loch Ness, have traditions attached to them of what were known back then as kelpies. And kelpie was a Scottish term meaning water horse. So back then, people were seeing in Loch Ness and on the shores of Loch Ness and on the shores and in the waters of other Scottish lochs, these large, usually black-coloured or white-coloured, large horses that would stand by the water's edge. When they saw a person, they would try and entice them to the water's edge, and they'd suddenly grab them and pull them into the water and supposedly steal their souls. But the kelpie, the water horse, was supposedly had the ability to transform also into like a beautiful woman who would also try and entice somebody down to the edge of the water and then again grab them and take their soul. So in other words, the kelpie back in the 15, 16, 1700s was a definitive shapeshifter at Loch Ness. Now, if we jump forward a couple of centuries to Loch Ness of today, everybody thinks of the Loch Ness monsters as looking, with a humpback and this long neck and four flippers like a plesiosaur. But that isn't what everybody reports. There have been cases where one witness described seeing what looked like a gigantic frog sitting on a shelf 50 feet under the water. It was seen by a diver. He said, it wasn't a long neck creature at all. It looked like a giant frog. Other people have described them as huge salamanders. One woman said that she swore the thing she saw had tusks. There's another case where somebody described it as looking like an alligator or a crocodile. Other people have said giant worms or eels. And so in other words, you could make a case that the Loch Ness monsters of today and the kelpies of yesterday are the exact same things, multiple, forms, being seen in multiple forms over numerous centuries, So you could make a case that, as I said, that the kelpies of old never really went away. They just got renamed as Nessies.
That's how it goes.
That's how it goes.
Legend to legend, year after year. You wonder about how this is going on, all the strange things that are happening there.
Well, I think the problem is with something like this, when you say, what's going on and that kind of thing, nobody really knows how to tackle shapeshifter stories because they are so strange. It's not the sort of thing you hear much about unless it's in relation to a book that's pretty much based on, the folkloric angle and how folklore and myths develop, which really isn't, overly connected to the world of the paranormal. But when you're dealing with, space brothers turning into balls of light or alien big cats appearing in crop circles after a ball of light was seen over the field. Things like that. So many people, I know from experience, just turn away because it doesn't sit well in any belief system. The cryptozoologists don't want to hear that kind of stuff. And the ufologists who are driven by the nuts and bolts angle, they don't want to hear it either. So it ends up in kind of a limbo situation almost. But, for me, I don't have sort of a belief system where I need aliens to be nuts and bolts or I need Bigfoot to be a giant ape. I just go where the data takes me, and I think the data is taking us in some really genuinely strange directions.
Well, it is interesting, however, how people want to pigeonhole these mysteries into a specific area, and when you try to spread their wings a little bit and open their horizons, they resist it quite a bit, don't they?
Well, that happens, in belief systems anyway. I mean, religion particularly. I mean, you look at all the different religions, and the only reason we're at war with other people who have different religions is because they think their God is different to our God, and our God doesn't exist, and theirs doesn't, and somebody else's does, and this book tells a real story. No, this book tells a real story. A lot of this says more about human nature, how we have belief systems, but more importantly, that people want belief systems as well, and they get hostile and defensive when those belief systems are questioned. That can relate to, the Quran versus the Bible in as much as it can relate to Bigfoot versus a ball of light,
We are going to break now, but more to come with Nick Redfern. And the book, by the way, is on shapeshifting, shapeshifters, morphing monsters, and changing cryptids. With Gene, Chris, and Nick, you're in
the Paracast.
Thank you for listening to GCN. Be sure to visit GCNlive.com today.
We also have swag. We have all these exclusive Paracast things that you can buy. We've got 60 or so different items, and entails t-shirts, sleeves for notebook computers, iPad cases, mouse pads, the Paracast Jumbo tote bag, all sorts of t-shirts and jackets and stuff like that for men and women. We have a Paracast aluminum water bottle. All this stuff, you go to store.theparacast.com, store.theparacast.com. What makes it special is that the items are the best quality, great t-shirts, fabrics, and they have our official logo on them. That's what makes them special, in multiple sizes and colors. We even have stuff for children, stuff for women, stuff for men. We have all sorts of sizes, like small up to X large. A lot of good stuff. That's the swag from the Paracast. You go to store.theparacast.com, stop by, and take a shopping tour.
It's a no-brainer. A Big Berkey water filter is the one you need, period. You need a water filter that removes chlorine, fluoride, pharmaceuticals, BPA, and other endocrine disruptors, pesticides, bacteria, viruses, and much more, right? And does it all at only 2 cents per gallon. Get the original and most trusted name in gravity water filtration, Big Berkey. And now GCN listeners receive 5% off ceramic filter systems using code GCN. Call or click 1-877-99-BERKEY or BigBerkeyWaterFilters.com. That's 1-877-99-BERKEY.
The answer to being in control of your own healthcare is freedom from insurance. Become part of a group of self-pay patients that come together to share in each other's medical expenses. Individual share amounts begin at $107 a month and $347 for families. Choose from 3 health-sharing programs. Holistic treatments may be eligible for sharing. See guidelines. Discount programs available for dental, vision, and pharmacy. Go to libertyoncall.org. That's libertyoncall.org.
Welcome back to the Paracast, the gold standard of paranormal radio. And now, here's Gene Steinberg.
All right. Going to ask you something here, too. There's a chapter there about bloodsuckers. And you think of the vampire legend where, of course, the vampire could always change to something else.
Yeah.
Quite often he'd be a wolf.
Well, yeah, in the old stories, the vampire could turn into, like you said, a wolf, a black cat, a bat, and so we have that shapeshifter angle. And I talk about that in the book to demonstrate the folkloric angle of vampires and how the phenomenon began. But one of the things I talk about more in that chapter is the Chupacabra of Puerto Rico, which, many people have perceived as a definitive vampire, in the sense that it's the term chupacabra is Spanish for goat sucker, because a lot of the animals that initially, I should say, attacked were goats, and the stories were that, massive amounts of blood were drained from their bodies. And I've been to Puerto Rico on many occasions doing expeditions looking for the chupacabra, and every time I've been there, I've heard stories of this sort of blood-draining angle. But why I include that in the book is because, again, people, in the same way people have talked about Mothman taking on different forms, that's exactly what I've had with the chupacabra on Puerto Rico. When I went there in 2004, a lot of the stories I had were the traditional ones that came out from the mid-90s, where people saw this creature, like a fast-running creature about the size of and design of a chimpanzee, but without hair, and having this sort of row of spikes down its head and neck, and sometimes with these vicious-looking claws and fangs. Now, other people swore that they saw something just like that, but which had what you would almost call like bat-like wings, like membranous wings, that kind of thing, which did give it reportedly like an almost looking like a giant bat, something along those lines. Now, there are other cases where people said to me they saw these things up close and personal and said that they had sort of bright feathery wings. And again, to be so close and to see something, it's difficult to see how they could mistake one thing for another. So I've had people tell me on Puerto Rico of sightings of what they were sure with a chupacabra, but looked incredibly different to somebody else's description. Now, I think it's way too much to accept that there could be multiple 4 or 5 different types of unknown animal on Puerto Rico. I don't believe that. But the idea that the chupacabra could be some sort of supernatural thing, which echoes kind of the Mothman stories, that does make me think that this lesser known angle of the chupacabra, and there could be a shapeshifter tie in there as well, unless the witnesses are mistaken, which isn't impossible. But I do point out that in some cases the descriptions were radically different, but still kind of similar, with the wings and the humanoid type body.
Flying people.
Yeah, flying people, which is like an even more bizarre angle. But you get those everywhere. I mean, you have the Owlman in England, Mothman in the United States. Back in the early 50s, in the city of Houston, had a wave of sightings of what became known as the Houston Batman. That's what the press called it back in 53. And you can find a few stories online on this little-known tale.
And the fact, of course, that his name was Bruce Wayne didn't impact matters, did it?
Exactly.
My son was born on February 19th, which happens to be one of the alleged birthdays of Bruce Wayne. I mean, there are other birth dates too, but February 19th applies to him and also to the young actor who plays Bruce Wayne in Gotham.
You're the only person I know, Gene, that could remember something. Bruce Wayne's birthday.
Well, it's my son, so I obviously consider it significant. Of course, he's not the Batman type, but, what the heck?
You seriously frighten me.
Well, wait till you see what happens when the moon is full and bright.
Yeah.
I don't know much about comic books, unfortunately, if anything. But yeah, I mean, I just doing the research in the book, I realised how much, the issue of shape-shifting has come into sort of popular culture in the modern era, not just in movies, but graphic novels and all sorts.
Well, I think even if you go back to the early 40s, I mentioned, of course, Shazam, which is the command that turns young Billy Batson into the magic superhero Captain Marvel. That's a shape-shifting operation. You got this skinny nerd who becomes this big, powerful creature, a human being, certainly, but he was the rival to Superman at one time. And that's one person. It's not like Clark Kent and Superman where it's the same guy pulling off the glasses. It's a completely different shape, a completely different voice, etc.
Yeah, and I mean, that kind of demonstrates the different aspects of what is defined as shape-shifting. It's not one thing. It's mimicking, it's physical changes, it's changes in the mind, it's supernatural changes, sort of taking on almost like a camouflage kind of angle. So it can mean all things to different people. And, I think that's an important thing to remember, that it's not just one angle. And when we look into these alternative angles as well. Like I said, we see a lot of connections and parallels, which lead me to believe that it is a legitimate phenomenon. But, as I said, the science of this is so far out that even trying to begin to rationalize it and understand it is almost a non-starter,
Well, unless you assume that in every case here, the shapeshifters are just an illusion to some degree. It's almost like a kind of mass hypnosis or a self-hypnosis or something. You're seeing something in a different form, but that's not what's there.
Well, that's not at all impossible. The idea that somebody is being sort of driven to see something that may be almost like a sophisticated hologram or something like that, rather than, a physical event. I mean, I guess the closest thing I could think of in the fictional world would be kind of like, the Matrix movies, where we're living in this extremely realistic looking world, which is, you cannot sort of define it not from the real world, but it isn't real. It's a dream, and we're living in like this sophisticated program. Well, maybe some encounters occur in that, there's evidence that some Men in Black cases might occur in that kind of scenario where if anybody else was in the room, they might just see the witness sitting there vacantly on the couch. But for the witness, there are these 3 or 4 MIB surrounding them, threatening them. But it could be, like a sophisticated hologram projection. And of course, if you've got a hologram and you're projecting something, well, then who knows how many, tweaks you could make to make it change its form. So I think that angle of like a deceptive hologram or a camouflage could actually explain a lot of cases, and could explain them perhaps quite easily as well. If it's not a physical change, but it's sort of a projection in front of the eye of the person, so to speak.
So the question would be, who is doing the projection?
Well, I mean, one of the things I would say that crops up in not all shapeshifters, and certainly not the majority, but it does crop up in some of them, is that when the people see these shapeshifters, they sometimes feel kind of sick and ill and weak and shaky. And so one of the things that I kind of suspect, and it is a suspicion, admittedly I don't have proof, but I do wonder if they're almost sort of like energy suckers. They're like a psychic vampire in the sense that they feed on the human life force, on energy. And maybe the whole point of transforming into these sort of frightening and terrifying images is to amp up the fear factor, which gets all these stress chemicals pumping around, and then they perhaps even feed on them parasitically, And so maybe the whole point is that they need to be seen to stay alive because they feed on us, and they can only feed on us if they've got the required high levels of stress chemicals and, energy levels swarming around us. So I do wonder if, the whole point of shapeshifting and being seen, the goal of it is, in a very strange way, we're their food almost.
They have to suck up the energy. Suck up this, ladies and gentlemen, and we'll be back in a moment. With Nick Redfern, Gene, and Chris, you're in the Paracast.
Attack of the Rockoids has been well received by critics and readers alike. It's a thrill-a-minute story you'll never forget. A former U.S. military intelligence officer is haunted by intense dreams about a beautiful woman pleading for his help after a terrible battle in outer space. But the dreams turn out to be true and thrust him into a telepathic love affair with a woman whose faraway planet is intent on destroying the Earth. And now the gripping tale continues in The Coming of the Protectors. It's the second book of the Rockoids trilogy, a galaxy-spanning adventure that pits our hapless heroes against powerful, fanatical enemies that threaten the lives of freedom-loving beings everywhere. Attack of the Rockoids and The Coming of the Protectors. Classic science fiction at its best, available now. For more details, visit rockoids.com. That's ROCKOIDS.com.
Back pain doesn't take vacations. It never celebrates holidays. It's on the job 24/7 to keep your life exactly where it is, in limbo. But it doesn't have to be that way, because Laser Spine Institute can help you take back your life from chronic neck and back pain. With a less than 1-inch incision, our minimally invasive procedures have provided relief to over 60,000 patients with a 97% patient satisfaction rate. So get ready to stand tall and live the life you've imagined for yourself without pain. Are you or a loved one suffering from a bulging disc, herniated disc, spinal stenosis, pinched nerve, or degenerative disc disease? Call our spine care consultants now at
855-510-BACK.
For a no-cost MRI review and to learn more. It's time to say goodbye to chronic neck and back pain.
Call 855-510-BACK to see if laser spine surgery is right for you. That's 855-510-BACK.
What have you got to lose? Laser Spine Institute, the leader in minimally invasive spine surgery.
In an emergency, you need a fire now. But what if the wood is wet? No problem for InstaFire. Our non-toxic fire starter packs lights wet wood, floats, and can even burn on water or in any weather. Sustains winds up to 30 miles per hour, and each pouch weighs only 1.75 ounces. Need an emergency or camp stove? Get the InstaFire Inferno stove that boils 20 ounces of water in under 3 minutes with controllable heat and temps from 425 to 1500 degrees. Free shipping. Go to instafire.com and use discount code RADIO30 up to 3 times for 30% off your order. InstaFire. Fire in an instant.
Hello, I'm Mike Lindell, the inventor of MyPillow, and like all of you out there, I had problems sleeping. Pillows would go flat, I would flip-flop all night long, I would wake up with a sore neck, maybe a headache, or feel like I needed a nap even though I slept 8 hours. When I invented MyPillow, I wanted it to where you could move the patented fill to give you the exact support you need as an individual, regardless of sleep position. MyPillow will get you into that deep REM sleep faster, and you will stay there longer. It's not about how much time we spend in bed, it's about how much of that quality sleep we get. I do all of my own manufacturing right here in the United States. I have a 10-year warranty. You can wash and dry my pillow, and I give you a 60-day money-back guarantee, so you have nothing to lose. And here's my best offer ever. You can buy one of my pillows and get one absolutely free.
Go to mypillow.com or call 800-870-0305 and use promo code GCN. That's mypillow.com or 800-870-0305 with promo code GCN.
Fully cooked, ready-to-eat bacon. I'm talking thick, meaty, center-cut presidential bacon. Savory and delicious. I buy some, I use some, I store some. Awesome. No refrigeration needed with a 10-year shelf life. NASA pack technology. Bacon. Fully cooked, fully hydrated, ready to eat right from the packed bacon or warm and served. Life-saving, ready-to-eat bacon. 10-year shelf life bacon. Ships free at fullycookedbacon.com. Fullycookedbacon.com.
We'd like to hear from you. If you have a comment or question about the Paracast, send it to news@theparacast.com. That's news@theparacast.com. And don't forget to visit our famous Paracast community forums at forum.theparacast.com.
That voice is getting hoarser and hoarser. Chris.
That's how I was talking like 3 weeks ago when I got sick.
Right. You know, he was originally going to be on a couple of weeks back, and he said, I don't know if you really want me on because I have this chest thing.
Yeah.
I've been dealing with a nasty ass chest cold for the past week and a half. In fact, my voice was almost gone after I got in last night.
No way. That's not good.
No.
Well, I got mine on a cruise ship, and I actually did lose my voice for like half a day. And I mean, without getting too graphic, I mean, the amount of green crap I was coughing up. I mean,
I know.
It was like, oh my God, it was like, well, I won't go into details, but you get the picture, so.
I'm still dealing with it. I don't know what it was. I'm still dealing with it, so.
But yeah, I got it on a cruise ship, and I think it's probably with all like that circulated air, like when you're on a plane or whatever.
Yeah. Well, I caught mine on the flight coming back from Denver. Yeah. Little babies are sick and coughing. It was awful.
I had a little bit of that a couple of weeks back where I was coughing a lot, and I thought maybe somebody I was taking during the ride-hailing gigs that I do, and one of the passengers possibly had a cold or a cough, and you can't say, "Get out. Get out of my car. Or you'll be exterminated." A lousy imitation.
That is a hazard, though, of flying and whatever is...
man.
There's always somebody on their plane who's sick with something. So.
Well, when little babies are coughing, God knows how powerful, those bugs are, because their immune systems are just so, jacked up and powerful to begin with. The bugs are going to be exceptionally robust.
It's totally off subject, of course, but I hardly ever get colds or get anything like that at all. And whether it has a benefit on it or not, but I have a lime every day. I eat a lime every day, which are packed with vitamin C. Well, I have one every day. I literally have like 365 limes a year.
Wow. Yeah, I love lime.
So I just chop them into fours and 4 quarters and just munch them down. And, But it's only a small fruit, but you have one every day for a year. That's a ton of limes. So.
Yeah, that's true.
There is an album called Nilsson Schmilsson where he sings a song called She Put the Lime in the Coconut.
I'll probably damage it, though, by drinking too much alcohol. So who knows? It probably balances out.
What's the line in the song, Gene? I called the doc and woke him up and said, "Doctor."
It says she put the lime in the coconut. She called the doctor, woke him up, and said, "Doctor, ain't there nothing I can take?" I said, "Doctor, to relieve this bellyache." I said, "Doctor, ain't there nothing I can take?" I'll tell you, he had to be in a pretty strange state of mind when Harry Nilsson wrote this song.
I've not heard that at all.
Well, he was also a notorious party animal and could party pretty much anybody under the table. He was quite the party boy.
Well, there's a story about Harry Nilsson, just very quickly, where the Beatles brought him in there and he met Brian Epstein. And he decided, though, he didn't like gays. So the Beatles threw him out when he said that. That's true, apparently. And then later on, after Brian Epstein died, John Lennon hooked up with Nilsson, and they became friends.
Lennon and McCartney's, I think, favorite American vocalist.
I don't know much about the Beatles either, so not my music.
Yeah, no. Nick, what do you think? Blitzkrieg Bop is being used as a jingle on the Peloton exercise bike commercials.
Yeah, I've seen that. It's a shame that they're not benefiting from the royalties and they're all gone,
Yeah, they're all dead.
Yeah, that's kind of wild, that their music gets used quite a lot, sports games all over the place.
Yeah. Is Tommy still alive? I think he died too, didn't he?
Yeah, Tommy died about 18 months ago, I think. It's kind of weird that all the ones who died were all like the 4 originals,
Right. Right.
And the other replacement drummers and the later towards the end, the bass players.
Mark is still around.
Yeah, he's still around. And Richie, who was in the band for a while, he's still around. And CJ, who replaced Dee Dee when he walked out in '89, I think it was. He's still around. And even Clem Burke, who played with him for 2 shows but couldn't keep up, he's still alive.
Yeah. Well, you're noticing now that the baby boomer rock star generation, it's all the party boys that are kicking off first. Bowie was notorious, had a terrible cocaine habit for years. Glenn Fry, another one, just a party animal. You're noticing that we're losing all the party boys first.
Lemmy.
And,
Lemmy's gone.
What about Tom Petty? Tom Petty was
a major party animal.
Sure.
Heroin addict, coke addict for on and off for many years. Yeah.
Eventually, it catches up with everybody. Eventually, when you sort of live on the edge all the time.
Well, explain the Rolling Stones to me then. How are they still around? I mean, you look at Keith Richards and you say this guy has already been dead for 50 years. Also, Chuck Berry hung out till he was in his 80s. And he was a really wild guy.
No, he was 90 when he died.
Was it 90?
Don't forget, though, with Keith Richards actually gave up all the hard stuff like 30 years ago. He got off heroin and everything.
Yeah, he's been clean since the mid-'80s.
Yeah, I mean, I think he does. I read his autobiography, and he said, no, he'll have a glass of wine or whatever, but, those days are gone for him as well. A lot of it
cigarettes.
It's training on the image now, it's his image more than anything today.
He was on the mic the other night and said that said something about the DEA. Don't bother me. I've been clean for 6 weeks. Pumping up the old image there, I guess, or something. Yeah, cigarettes are what's going to get Keith. He's been a major smoker for many years.
But I mean, they're doing well. I mean, what are they? They've got to be like early to mid 70s now, don't they? Something like that.
Bill Wyman, of course, who's not in the band anymore. He was the oldest. I think he's 80, 81 now.
Well.
Yep, getting up there. Charlie Watts is the one that blows my mind. I mean, you see all these bands that have been around, 30, 40 years, and they're on their third or fourth drummer. Playing drums is you do that 300 nights a year. I mean, it's a very physical occupation, number one. And number two, you notice that drummers tend to be the wilder and crazier guys in the band generally. I'm kind of painting with a broad brushstroke there, but Charlie Watts, you really got to admire the fact that he's in his approaching mid 70s, and he's still touring and playing drums. And that's God, you got to.
He's kind of more like a beat drummer, you know what I mean, rather than somebody who's sort of really pounding, the skins with and all frills and double bass and whatever,
the Keith Moon, Mitch Mitchell style.
We got more to come. Not always about music. We'll get off that in a moment.
I love him.
We got Nick and Gene and Chris. You're in
the Paracast.
Thank you for listening to GCN. Visit GCNlive.com today.
Hunters, anglers, campers, and survivalists. Get back to nature. Expand your horizons with the highest quality, most versatile, unique slingshots and sling bows on the market at slingbow.com. Slingbow products are compact and models start from just $17.98. They're perfect for your bug-out bag or storing in your vehicle. Give yourself and your loved ones the excitement and tradition of slingbow. A new frontier in archery and truly modern twist on this primitive survival tool. Feel the thrill only at slingbow.com.
Looking for that edge during those intimate moments? We see many ads for enhancement, but the side effects include death. At GCN Team, we should change the Healthy Body, Brain, and Heart Pack to the Healthy Libido Pack. The brain and heart are not the only organs that require a healthy vascular system. For proper blood flow at the right moment, go to GCNteam.com or call 877-878-4203. That's 877-878-4203. That's 877-878-4203.
We all know that Berkey Water Purification Systems are the most trusted name in water filtration. As an authorized Berkey dealer for over 6 years and serving thousands of satisfied customers, the Berkey Guy offers amazing specials for Berkey Water Filtration Systems. The Berkey Light Systems include a set of self-sterilizing and recleanable black purification elements that purify water by removing chlorine, pathogenic bacteria, cysts, and parasites to non-detectable levels and remove harmful chemicals such as herbicides and pesticides. Order the Berkey Light System today, complete with 2 black Berkey elements for only $231, and the Berkey Guy will ship your order free of charge. With the purchase of a Berkey Light, the Berkey Guy is also offering a set of fluoride and arsenic filters for only $39.99. That's over 30% off the retail price. Call the Berkey Guy at 1-877-886-3653. That's 1-877-886-3653. Or order online at goberkey.com. That's goberkey.com today.
Does the current world crisis in North Korea or our domestic crisis right here in America concern you? Well, I know it concerns me. My friends over at Legacy Food Storage have solutions in the event there's the inevitable. What's the inevitable? Civil unrest, a run on your local grocery store. And here's my question to you. If this happens, how do you feed your children? How do you feed your grandchildren? Legacy Food Storage has the solutions. In fact, they can help you implement a simple plan to take care of your needs in the event 20% of the inevitable. By calling them right now, I have authorized them to give you a special 20% discount at checkout by simply using GCN. Call 888-543-7345 or visit them at legacyfoodstorage.com. That's 888-543-7345 or visiting them at legacyfoodstorage.com. Make sure you use GCN at checkout for an incredible 20% discount. Don't be a victim. Take control of your life now.
Individuals and businesses with tax problems, listen carefully. Do you feel like you're losing control over your finances? If you owe over $10,000 in back taxes or have unfiled tax returns, we can help you take back control. The IRS is the largest and most aggressive collection agency in the world, and they can seize your bank account, garnish your paycheck, close your business, and file criminal charges. Take control of your tax problems now by calling the experts at Tax Mediation Services and take advantage of the Fresh Start program and new laws that may allow us to negotiate a settlement for the lowest amount possible. Our team of tax attorneys and enrolled agents can stop collections and get you protected so you can take control of your financial future. Tax Mediation Services is accredited by the Better Business Bureau. Call now for a free case review and a price protection guaranteed quote.
Call Tax Mediation Services now at 800-610-7740. That's 800-610-7740. 800-610-7740.
Hi, it's Grant Cameron from presidentialufo.com. You're listening to the Paracast, the gold standard of paranormal radio.
Of course, speaking of drummers, Ringo, he was on tour recently. And he's, 77 now?
Well, I don't think he's that old, but he's getting up there.
I'll look it up as you guys talk. Let's just get back to the Shapeshifters, unless we have some shape-shifting drummers. How's that?
Not that I noticed. I haven't read the article, but I did see on Facebook there was a headline where it said Billy Corgan of the Smashing Pumpkins had said he'd seen somebody shapeshift.
Really? Well, Lady Gaga claimed that Prince Charles shapeshifted in front of her.
Oh.
You see, the monarchy in the UK,
maybe I'm wrong
they are shapeshifters. Oh, by the way, Ringo Starr turned 77 in July.
Wow. That's getting up there.
I mean, peace, love. Of course, he doesn't play the drums as heavily as others, and I gather probably in concerts, because he's singing a lot, he has others do the drumming. Paul McCartney, though, hasn't aged well at all. He looks much older than Ringo.
Why would someone like a Paul McCartney, who's worth $1 billion, why are they out touring? And I guess once it's in your blood, it's kind of hard to stop. But man, it's not like he needs the money.
I think a lot of it is, it's like that rush when you get on stage and everybody's cheering for you and clapping and screaming. It's probably hard. It's hard to give that up. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I suppose. Yeah. Especially if you got an ego the size of Mount Rushmore like he does.
Well, you have to have an ego like that to do what he does. If you don't, you couldn't get up on stage like that. But his voice is pretty raw these days, isn't it? He's 75, by the way.
Yeah. So speaking about raw voices, Bob Dylan for the past 10 years, I mean, he's Croaky the Frog. You can barely, I mean, it's almost embarrassing that he's even still trying to pass off his voice as being lyrical and melodious.
Well, it's like Lemmy, I mean, he traded on his voice. But, I mean, in the last year, and I know he just wanted to just keep going on, what else was he going to do, and he sort of died just a couple of weeks after the last gig, he just managed to do it, just hang on. But, I mean, his voice was shot 12 months before they stopped, and with hindsight, if you watch some of those last concerts, yes, it's incredible that he was almost 70 and playing a 90-minute Motorhead show, 3 nights a week.
Yeah.
It's incredible to do that, but also wasn't on top form, and I think there's a case to be made that the time comes when you should stop anyway. You know what I mean? Because people remember you, unfortunately, when you're at your worst. They're like, "Oh my God, remember him," that kind of thing. So
Chuck Berry was performing almost until the end, the last couple of years, I think.
Yeah.
Well, if they could still do it, I mean, but it's kind of like going back to the Ramones. I mean, they're my favourite band, but I mean, I'm glad when they split up, they were all still in their 40s. because it'd be ridiculous to see a bunch of guys 65 trying to play Ramones songs at that speed. You know what I mean?
How old is Pete Townsend?
Pete Townsend's, yeah, he's in his early 70s. I think Roger Daltrey's a little older, a couple years older.
Yeah, I'm looking. He's 72. Pete Townsend.
Yeah, and Daltrey, I think, 74.
I'm looking. And then we have to get back to shape-shifting. He's actually, let's see.
It's classified.
Yeah, he's a year older. So he's like 73 now, I guess. Anyway. All right, let's get back to reality here, or whatever. If someone wants to start looking into legends of shapeshifters, where in your book can you point them to a starting point?
Oh, well, that's a good question. I mean, I think it's inevitable that people are going to be sort of driven to werewolf-type stories. But what I would say for the modern era, you have this new version of the werewolf, which is known as the dogman. It's like a politically correct term for people who don't want to use the term werewolf because it seems so bizarre, Now, there actually aren't a lot of reports of dogmen, allegedly changing from human to dogman. In fact, they're almost non-existent, ironically. But you do get a lot of reports of these so-called dogmen figures, like the Black Dogs of England, where they transform from being on 4 limbs to 2. Now, the dogman phenomenon is very much like an ongoing one. A good friend of mine, Linda Godfrey, has written like 5 or 6 books on the subject. She gets so many reports. So I would say to people, if you're interested in the shape-shifting angle, make a start with the dogman issue because, reports are still being made, as I said, and it's a very much an ongoing mystery and a lot of ongoing research, and that will sort of give you some insight into what people have said about these creatures running on 4 limbs like a gigantic wolf, and they stand up and their legs kind of change a bit and they're more humanoid. So, that's very kind of relevant time-wise to where we are now, so that would definitely be a good place to start.
Well, Linda Godfrey's been on a couple of times on the Paracast. I urge listeners to look them up because she really is a nice woman and has a lot of fascinating stories to tell. Definitely.
Yeah.
So we want to do that.
I would suggest that one, yeah.
Definitely going to focus on that one there.
Yeah, and of course, sometimes, the more I write about these things, and I think that, I'm sure Chris gets this too with his books, people do contact you when there's something relevant to, that's relevant to them, and if you've written about it. So that does sometimes make it easier when people approach you rather than you have to try and find the stories.
Well, there's an impression here, I think, also, Nick, that a lot of these shape-shifting stories are not new. But that's not the case. You're getting stuff all the time, aren't you?
Yeah, I mean, that actually is a good point because even when people think of werewolves, they think of like Eastern Europe in the 1700s or whatever, and some little village in East Germany where they get the local priest out and the whatever, to kill the vampire or the werewolf. But no, you're right that, shapeshift, these big thicket Bigfoot type stories I was talking about changing into balls of light. The most recent one I have from the big thicket, I think, is about 4 years ago. The black dogs are still being seen in England. Not as much, granted, as they used to be, but people do still see them. And these flying humanoid things, we still get to see them. So it's very much an ongoing phenomenon. But I think the problem is, as we kind of touched on earlier, that these cases are so bizarre in many respects that people a lot of the time, people just don't want to talk about them because the weirder it is, the more worried they are about their reputations,
Well, certainly you're not worried about that.
No,
you came out with a book on shape-shifting.
No, I have no reputation or, sense of having to worry about what I say. I say what I say. If people like it, that's fine. If people like it or don't like it, I'm not going to lose sleep over it. I'm going to say what I think and put out what I think, and if people like it, that's good. People think Nick's crazy. Well, I'll give them the middle finger, so what?
Well, here's something right here. In August 2016, the author, that's you, sir, visited the site of many of the Defiance, Ohio Wolfman encounters from 1972. You were trying to do the research. hands-on, direct on the scene.
Well, yeah, I mean, I always try and do this, you know. I mean, like with the Big Thicket, I've been there many times. I've been to Point Pleasant many times, Puerto Rico. I always think it's important, if you're going to do investigative work, to go to the places. Now, the one you talked about, Defiance, Ohio, this is one of the very few cases I have on record from a relatively recent time where the witnesses were sure that this creature was a human turned into a werewolf. Now, Defiance is a little town in Ohio.
Let's tell the story in our final segment. We'll hear the story about what happened in Defiance, Ohio. You used to know somebody who lived there. I don't think he was a werewolf.
You never know, though.
Gene, Nick, and Chris, it's your turn, Nick. You're in
the Paracast.
What was that? Your English football announcer voice?
Thank you for listening to GCN. Visit GCNlive.com today.
As you know, neighbors, web hosting can be pretty cheap, but not all hosting is the same. DreamHost wins Best of Awards year after year. You get unlimited disk space, unlimited bandwidth, and even the low-cost plans put your sites on high-performance SSDs. Want to know more about what DreamHost has to offer? Go to technightowl.com/host. Once again, that's technightowl.com/host.
First came Attack of the Rockoids, and it was a critically acclaimed success. And now there is The Coming of the Protectors. A former military intelligence man is contacted by a space woman in a dream that turns out to be a nightmare because evil forces on her distant planet are planning to conquer the Earth. This is gripping science fiction of the classic kind. Attack of the Rockoids and The Coming of the Protectors. Find out more at rockoids.com. That's Rockoids, ROCKOIDS.com.
Hi, this is Ted Anderson. I'm here to tell you about GCNtelecare.com, a team of board-certified doctors assisting you 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. Within 15 minutes of registration, care your family can afford. Revolutionizing the healthcare industry, virtual consulting providing diagnosis of non-emergency medical issues by phone or secure video on computer or smart mobile devices. GCNtelecare.com, virtual care anywhere.
Dr. Carolyn Dean wants you to have a free chapter of her new book, The Magnesium Miracle 2nd Edition, and it's available at magmiracle.com. In your free chapter, Dr. Carolyn Dean explains how magnesium is essential to support the structure and function and overall health of your body. Your free chapter is your guide to learn how to support your heart, bone, metabolic, lung, and mental health with this powerful mineral. The Magnesium Miracle 2nd Edition is available on Amazon, but right now get a free chapter at magmiracle.com, spelled M-A-G, miracle.com.
It's a no-brainer. A Big Berkey water filter is the one you need, period. You need a water filter that removes chlorine, fluoride, pharmaceuticals, BPA, and other endocrine disruptors, pesticides, bacteria, viruses, and much more, right? And does it all at only 2 cents per gallon. Get the original, most trusted name in gravity water filtration, Big Berkey. And now GCN listeners receive 5% off ceramic filter systems using code GCN. Call or click 1-877-99-BERKEY or BigBerkeyWaterFilters.com. That's 1-877-99-BERKEY.
If you're a sleep apnea sufferer who's on the go to your phone and call right now to try the world's first portable mini CPAP device, absolutely risk-free for 10 restful nights. It's the Transcend Mini CPAP, an engineering marvel that's as small as a soda can and weighs less than a pound. Its unique design is so small and so light, you can fit it in your briefcase or purse to use anywhere you go. No more dragging around a big, bulky CPAP. Even better, now you can try Transcend absolutely risk-free for 10 restful nights by calling minicpap.com, 1-800-962-4276. Transcend is FAA compliant too, so you can even sleep comfortably while flying. You can also add a battery pack that's as tiny as a deck of cards. So now you can enjoy the freedom to sleep comfortably anywhere. But don't wait. To receive your 10-night in-home trial, call minicpap.com now. 1-800-962-4276. That's 1-800-962-4276.
This is Dan Pilla. Do you owe the IRS money you can't pay? Are tax debts crippling you? I've defended people from the IRS for over 30 years. I've helped thousands, and I can help you too. I wrote the book on IRS settlement, and I'm telling you, there's no such thing as a hopeless case. Call 800-34-NO-TAX to finally get free of IRS debt. With the IRS's new programs, there's never been a better time to solve your problem. Call 800-34-NO-TAX. That's 800-34-NO-TAX, or my website, danpilla.com.
Hi, this is Bryce Abel. I'm the producer of Dark Skies, the co-author of AD After Disclosure, and you are listening to the Paracast, the gold standard of paranormal radio.
That must have been your British soccer announcer voice.
Well, something along those lines. I am big into soccer, so it could be.
Well, the only thing is, if you keep doing that, somebody will sock you.
True. The Defiance werewolf story is a weird one. It dates back to 1972. And in the summer months, what happened was that there were an initial wave of sightings near an old railroad that runs through the town, and which is still there to this day. It hasn't really changed at all. Just the old buildings have just been repainted, etc., etc. But what was happening was that, you had some of the guys who were working shifts. So they're working through the night on the railroad. And they were the initial people who reported seeing what looks like one of these so-called dogmen that I mentioned earlier. But with one difference, it was wearing like tattered clothes, sort of no shoes or anything, but a tattered shirt, tattered pants, as if it had sort of, burst out of its regular clothing and grown, and the clothes had split. And of course, at first people laughed, but these railroad staff were adamant about what they'd seen. Then other people around town, 'cause it's not a big town, heard these weird howlings in the middle of the night. People reported hearing scratches on the front doors, and the police got involved. They actually even opened a file, what you could arguably call a real-life X-file, and maybe, through the Freedom of Information Act, you might still be able to get that. It's probably stored away in the vaults or the old dusty filing cabinets at the police station. But the police took the story very seriously, and the local media in and around Defiance all covered this story for roughly 2 months, from about July to the start of July to the end of August in 1972, and it was actually, as I said, taken very, very seriously because multiple people were seeing this creature. And so when I had a chance, I went out there last year, just roughly round about this time last year, a little bit earlier, with a bunch of friends, Lyle Blackburn, who's written a couple of books on Bigfoot, and Ken Gerhard, who's written a book called On the Encounters with Flying Humanoids. And it was kind of cool to see the original location, which, as I said, hasn't changed much, and sort of lots of woodland and rivers, and the ideal place if it was a real flesh and blood animal. But like so many of these events, it came to a sudden end and the creature was gone. But that's one of the very few from a relatively modern era that I've got where people were actually talking about seeing a wolf-like creature that literally changed from a guy around town that nobody identified as the werewolf, but that, for all intents and purposes, that's what people were thinking, that there was somebody in town who, at the sight of a full moon, would literally change into a werewolf. But those cases are extremely sort of few and far between.
Well, this is so long ago, 1972. Have there been more recent things there in Defiance? Or was it a singular set of events?
What I should stress, granted it's 45 years ago, so it's not recent, but compared to, what I meant was compared to, the 300 or 400 year old cases, it is recent. But what I would say is that all the cases I've got, and nearly all the ones that Linda has got, Linda Godfrey, there is barely a handful where there's been a human component with the dogman. It's always, the dogman is just always the dogman, even though it has the ability to stand on 2 legs and 4. But there are very, very few, maybe 3 or 4 out of all the 6 books that Linda's written, where somebody claims that, they saw a person change into one of these things. So that angle today is pretty much out of the picture, in terms of what defines a dogman or a werewolf. It's not, somebody gets bitten and then full moon comes along, they start growing fangs and fur and whatever, hair. It's not like that today, even if it was with the old legends.
Where did those legends begin about biting someone, a werewolf, for example, and that person develops the disease? It sounds like a contagious disease kind of myth.
Well, I think more inclined to think there were multiple reasons as to why these stories might develop. One could be, a crazy person who has, lycanthropy, where they literally think they are changing. One of the intriguing things about the story of the Beast of Gévaudan, France, this creature that supposedly slaughtered numerous people in the 1700s, one of the theories was that it could have been a captured hyena or an exotic animal brought into France from, possibly Africa, somewhere like that. I don't think there's just one explanation for stories like werewolves. There could have been, somebody may well have been attacked by a pack of vicious big wolves. Somebody else had lycanthropy. One could have been an exotic animal perceived as a wolf or a wolf man. And we have the supernatural angle of the dogman. So, you put all those angles together and they unify into one sort of cohesive angle of the werewolf, but it's actually several things coming together and becoming unified.
I could suppose also someone sustains or contracts some kind of disease that causes growths on their face or body. And therefore, the legend can go, well, they were bitten by something and they became another creature, and a little bit of exaggeration turns them into werewolves, I guess.
One good example, or one good possibility, if somebody got bitten by a rabid dog and, got rabies, you can find footage online of people in the final stages of rabies. They're deranged. Somebody with rabies in the final stages, that's like the closest thing you could imagine to like a real zombie outbreak. They're just psychotic almost at times. So if there were people on the loose, bitten by a rabid dog, rabid wolf, no cure, it wouldn't surprise me at all if some might have been born out of some tragic character who got rabies.
So The Walking Dead is about shape-shifting because you turn into this other creature.
Well, I guess you do. That's right, yeah. That's another type of shifting, yeah.
And we have this obsession now with zombies. I don't understand that at all, but then maybe I'm too old to care.
The Walking Dead, but I mean, there's a lot of garbage out there as well. I like that show, but even I think, like your favourite band, it's time to wrap it up and let's go out on a high and not just drag it out forever and a day.
The classic example of dragging it out and milking the cow would be Ancient Aliens. I thought that show, if they were lucky, they were going to get 3 seasons out of it, and it's just absolutely, I'm flabbergasted that they've been able to milk that cow for I think 12 years now?
The last time I was on it was the last time I was on it because I kind of feel the same. It had its run. But I've always been like that with everything. Like my favourite athletes or bands, I think there's a time to stop. And I think, that's, you can relate that to any aspect of life, really, when it has a time limit on it. Yeah, something else will come along, like another paranormal show or whatever, and it'll be a hit for a while, and then something else and something else.
They'll stop doing Star Trek retreads. In fact, the latest show, Star Trek Discovery, is really called Star Trek Retread. Now, some people actually like it. I only saw the one episode because I don't want to subscribe to another streaming service to see it.
I actually haven't watched any Star Trek or anything since I was probably like 5 or 6. I was a little, maybe 11. But I remember watching the original series when I was a little kid, when it was broadcast in the sort of late mid-70s in England, but other than that, people are kind of surprised because I'm not really into sci-fi. I've never watched anything like any of these other shows like Babylon 5 or Battlestar Galactica. I've never seen any of them. I've never seen any of the Star Wars movies. I've never seen any of the Lord of the Rings movies.
Okay, where can we find more of your stuff, Nick Redfern?
My blog, World of Whatever. Just type in Nick Redfern plus World of Whatever, you'll find me. Or the Twitter, Nick Redfern UFO. or you can find me on Facebook. All the books you can get from Amazon, and most of them from Barnes & Noble.
You can find us on Twitter if you look for the Paracast. Look for 2 Paracast fan clubs on Facebook. Look for Chris O'Brien's site, OurStrangePlanet.com, for new stuff. Check out the Paracast Plus at plus.theparacast.com. We have some new stuff, plus some shows that you actually have to get a second login from Paul to see. And they're going up in the Paracast Plus with the After the Paracast podcast and other goodies. To learn more, go to plus.theparacast.com. That's plus.theparacast.com. Subscriptions start just $1.49 a week. So glad to have you back. Nick Redfern, thanks for joining us on the Paracast.
Yeah, thanks, Nick.
All right. Thanks, guys. Thanks a lot. See you later.
The Paracast, featuring Gene Steinberg and Christopher O'Brien, is a copyrighted presentation of Making the Impossible, Incorporated. Tune in next week for a new adventure in The Paracast.